GBNews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Utterly fascinating. It's a 3D rendering of the wreckage for the first time. It's going to be projected onto a warehouse wall in London. People will be able to see this in its full magnificence for the first time. Tell us how exciting you think this is.
This is amazing footage and amazing pictures. To be able to see that kind of detail underwater of the Titanic, I think is really amazing. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was they said that the punctures were a series of A4 size holes along the side of the hull, not a big long slice, which would have clearly doomed the ship as the iceberg slid down the hull.
And it's fascinating. There is also a video, a recreation. They've analysed, as you said, the damage caused to the hull when the ship famously hit that iceberg. And it now appears, David Market, it was more of a glancing blow. And that is leading the researchers to believe in this fascinating project. If there'd just been a moment of seeing the glacier a bit sooner, then it may have been a glancing blow that would not have taken the Titanic down.
Absolutely. If she had been going just a little bit slower, if they had immediately responded with the rudder in the right direction, and if the ship had been designed with a bigger rudder relative to the size of the ship, any of these little tiny things could have met, instead of a glancing blow, missing it by just 1 meter or so.
And it is incredible because this is part of a documentary. It's called Titanic, The Digital Resurrection. It's going to be broadcast on the National Geographic Channel on Monday.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, first, Keir Starmer claimed it wasn't right to say that only women can have cervixes. Then he said 99.9% of women cannot have a penis. Well, today he declared a woman is an adult female. Today I'll also ask one of his MPs, has the Prime Minister finally made up his mind? And for months, GB News has called for crime data by nationality to be published for foreign offenders. Time and time again, the Home Office claimed they didn't have the data. Yet today, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has announced that they do hold the data. More than that, they will also publish it by the end of the year. What took them so long? And will the uncomfortable facts destroy the myth of the multicultural dream? And today, the statutory public inquiry into the systemic failures to stop triple killer Valdo Calacane begins. And I'll be joined in the studio by the families of the deceased who say wrongs will be righted. We will make sure of that, whatever it takes. And today, John Morris, a World War II Special Forces veteran, celebrates his 103rd birthday. John is now the oldest surviving Chelsea pensioner, and his father fought at both the Somme and Ypres. Well, today he'll join me in the studio, along with SAS hero Matthew Hellier, to celebrate his extraordinary life. On the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. So, a woman is an adult human after all. I mean, my toddler could have told you that, but it took the Prime Minister about 4 years to make his mind up. And only then he made his mind up when the law said it was OK for him to make his mind up, because science and the law were now on his side, as well as, logic and common sense. Why did it take the Prime Minister so long to make his blooming mind up, though? Was he bowing down to trans ideology, scared of minority vocal groups, the types who vandalised 7 statues in Parliament Square? Can you imagine if the so-called far right did that? They'd all be in jail by now, yet nobody has been apprehended. Is there two-tier justice for the trans community? And for too long has the Prime Minister stood alongside them? Why this sudden awakening? Do you believe this new position from the Prime Minister, who's had more positions on this than the Kama Sutra? Or is this simply his latest position? Does that shed into light a bigger question? Does anybody know what Keir Starmer stands for when he doesn't even seem to know himself? I put that to one of his members of Parliament who's sitting in the studio with me, Graham Stringer. Next, get in touch. Do you think Keir Starmer's position on this is true or just the latest one that he's having to hold? Get in touch. GBNews.com/you'll say is the way to do that. But now's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. The top story this hour. The Vatican has confirmed that Pope Francis's funeral will take place on Saturday this weekend at 10 a.m. local time on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. His body is now lying in an open coffin at his Vatican residence before being moved tomorrow for 3 days of public mourning. World leaders, including Donald Trump, Sir Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Volodymyr Zelensky and President Lula are among those set to attend this weekend. The Pope requested a modest ceremony and he'll be buried not at St. Peter's but in a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary in Central Rome. The global economy is slowing sharply, with the IMF blaming Donald Trump's sweeping import tariffs and the uncertainty that they've caused so far. It's cut global growth forecasts to now 2.8% for this year, with the United States now expected to grow just 1.8%. That is down a full point on last year. Well, China and the Eurozone are also set to slow as trade tensions ripple through global supply chains. And that turbulence is already hitting markets. Gold has reached a record high as investors flock to safer assets. And it follows Trump calling the Federal Reserve chairman a major loser for not cutting interest rates. That outburst sent US stocks and the dollar tumbling yesterday, though markets elsewhere have steadied somewhat. Here at home, the Equalities Minister says trans women should access services based on their biological sex, following a landmark Supreme Court ruling. Bridget Phillipson claims the judgment made the law crystal clear, but stopped short of directly saying trans women should use men's toilets. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has also welcomed the decision, calling it a much-needed step. The ruling allows for single-sex spaces like hospitals and refuges to exclude trans people where proportionate. Campaigners say it gives clarity, but some trans groups warn it could weaken protections under the Equality Act. The government will, for the first time, publish the nationalities and crimes of foreign offenders living in the UK. More than 19,000 foreign criminals were awaiting deportation at the end of last year, up since the Conservatives left office. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has ordered officials to release the data by the end of 2025. Sources say the most common nationalities are Albanian, Romanian and Polish, with offences including drug production, theft and violent assault. Labour says it is taking action that the Tories failed to, while the Conservatives claim the government has buckled under pressure. Meanwhile, the Conservatives have announced plans to scrap non-crime hate incidents. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch has proposed a new law to protect free speech that would ban police in almost all cases from collecting personal data where no crime has been committed. Take a listen.
This is really important because what we're seeing is a lot of police time being wasted on people not liking something they saw on social media. I think I saw one about a mobility scooter on a pavement. We've spent about 60,000 hours of police time on this when they should be out there catching real criminals. And this is one of those things which, when we were in government, we gave guidelines on how they should use these. The police have not followed them, so it's time to just get rid of them completely. The police should be focusing on real crime, not non-crime.
From today, 750 schools will open new breakfast clubs with 30 minutes of morning childcare also available to parents until July. The Prime Minister says the breakfast clubs will provide parents with breathing space and free them from rigid school hours. That trial will run ahead of an expected national rollout promised in last year's Labour manifesto. Well, Minister for Early Years Stephen Morgan told us here on GB News it will save parents, he says, around £450 a year.
All the evidence tells us that if children go to school hungry, then they're not ready to learn. And we know that breakfast clubs will socialise children ahead of the start of the school day. And I also recognise that family budgets are really stretched at the moment. So our commitment on breakfast clubs will save parents £450 a year on top of what we're doing as a government around the early years entitlement and capping the number of school branded uniform items.
Those are the latest headlines. I'll be back with you for more in around half an hour's time. Now, let's head straight over to Westminster and Martin Daubney.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has finally broken his silence on the Supreme Court's ruling that transgender women are not legally women. Well, he said the courts had provided real clarity.
Your response to last week's Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman?
I welcome the court's decision and ruling. I think it's very important that we've now got real clarity. I think that it's a good thing the Supreme Court have come to their decision. That does provide that clarity that I think will now enable us to ensure that all the guidance is in the right place, and to reaffirm something that I've long argued, which is about safe spaces for women.
But it seems to have taken a change of law for our Prime Minister to change his mind.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not. I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know.
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just.
And just for further clarity, previously, Sir Keir Starmer, while in opposition, said it wasn't fair to claim that only women can have cervixes. Confused? Join the club. Well, joining me now is GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster, and also the Labour Member of Parliament for Blackley and Broughton, Graham Stringer. Welcome to the show, both of you. Catherine, welcome back. Lovely to have you back at GB News after your well-deserved break. Let's start with Sir Keir Starmer's latest position. Is it his real position? Or the latest position, I guess we don't know. But it took him a while to speak out. The Supreme Court ruling was last Wednesday. Here we are, 6 days later. Finally, he's piped up.
Yes, he finally has, and he said a woman is an adult female. So he said that he has welcomed the clarity. That is something I don't think the word clarity anybody could really use about Sir Keir Starmer's position on this over the last few years. I've got personal experience of this. About a year ago on the election campaign, I asked him a very, very specific question about female anatomy regarding a comment that Rosie Duffield had made that he'd said was wrong. Tony Blair had said something similar that he agreed with. And I said, can you tell me specifically what's the difference between... It was a question about anatomy, biology.
Oh, you can mention it.
And he said... I'm very committed to women's rights. Look how many females I've got in my shadow cabinet, and so on and so forth. He didn't answer the question at all. And we know that often politicians don't, forgive me, Graham, but this was so blatant because the question that I asked and the answer that he gave bore no relation to each other. And at the end, I said, but Prime Minister, anyway, he was whisked off. And then I was given a talking to by one of his advisors who made it clear to me that I'd got all this very, very wrong. I don't think I had got it very wrong, to be honest. So, yes, we have some clarity at last. But the consequences of this ruling will be huge. And I also think what's going to be really interesting is what happens about all those incredibly offensive placards that were on display at the protest last weekend and all the death threats that were made to the women who won that case, because there were placards talking about burning J.K. Rowling, about the only good turf is effectively a hanging turf. Really, really horrible, horrible stuff. And Kemi Badenoch was speaking about this earlier, and she was saying that this needs to be dealt with, taken very seriously, and that Sir Keir Starmer proved last summer with the riots that they can act quickly if they want to. So let's see what happens with that.
Graham Stringer, let's bring you in. now. You're of a vintage, if you pardon my expression, you're of a mindset, a traditional Labour mindset. You must think this is just a sideshow, a farce, something that gets in the way of politics. Nevertheless, here we are, Graham Stringer. And does it concern you that the Labour leader, Prime Minister Keir Starmer, seems to change his mind like the weather on this topic? And does that allow us to draw the conclusion that how can we know what his position is on anything if he doesn't know his own position on things as basic as what is a woman?
He should have paid more attention in biology lessons, I think. But on a serious point, it's been clear, I've written articles about it. Women have XX chromosomes, men have XY chromosomes. The law was very clear on that. If you read the judgment of the Supreme Court, it says very explicitly the law doesn't make sense if you don't have this biological definition of men and women. So it's a shame that we've wasted so much political space and time, but more importantly than that, there's been real damage done to real human beings. Men, people with XY chromosomes, have been allowed to box women. They've been allowed into football matches. The FA and some football clubs like Newcastle United, who've suspended a woman supporter for basically saying men were men and women were women, have behaved appallingly. But some women have been injured because men who've had the benefit of, during their adolescence, of being fueled with testosterone and growing bigger muscles, have damaged them and hurt them seriously.
A lot of people watching the show will totally agree with what you're saying there, Graham. But on the broader point of applying this new law, this common sense law, is that going to happen anytime soon? There's a report out today saying all 28 London NHS trusts are ignoring the rules, and there is even a rebellion within the Labour Party today going to town to try and challenge this. Is this what? And again, I hate to bring Brexit into this, but is there a case where Keir Starmer, Labour Party, a lot of parliamentarians outside Labour Party, to be fair, seem to think they know better? They seem to think they know better than the electorate. They seem to think they know better than common sense. And in this case, they seem to think they're above the law.
I mean, I think there's two separate points there. One, MPs, members of party, the whole public, the whole adult public, are entitled to campaign to change the law. What they're not entitled to do is subvert the law. One of the problems I think we've got in this country generally, too much power has been passed over to quangos.
Yes.
People who are not directly accountable to government or parliament, one or the other. And if they go their own way, as recently the Sentencing Council was going its own way on something rather different from this, then they need to be brought up. They need to be either abolished, the individuals changed, or instructed what to do with the change of the law. So I think those are the two issues. People can campaign for any change in the law that they want, but part of the public administration should obey the law. What about Catherine's point about applying the law, with rigour? I mean, some of those placards you saw, some of the threats, some of the grotesque, words from trans activists towards women, they don't seem to be followed up by the coppers in the same way, I don't know, a St George's Day placard might.
Well, I mean, they would seem, I think many people will see some of them as an incitement to violence. They are talking about women being burnt. They're talking about women being hung. One of them was like, if you don't like looking at trans people, poke your eyes out. Another one was about a lobotomy, showing somebody stabbing themselves. I mean, very, very, very violent. So you would hope that the police will take this very seriously indeed, because, I think, personally, those are incredibly offensive. And the death threats that have been made to these women also. But, Graham, do you not worry about the damage that can be done to the views of women towards the Labour Party, because Labour's been very keen to not upset the trans community up until this point. But we've got people like J.K. Rowling last year was saying that, you know, she'd given £1 million, I think, to Labour going back a long, long time. She said she didn't know that she could vote for them last year. Now she's praising Kemi Badenoch, saying that she's the only politician that has basically stuck up for women's rights.
Well, I think electorally, it's never been sensible. I've campaigned for a long time for anti-discrimination policies, and we didn't succeed in the 80s and 90s by calling people names, threatening them, or saying they were bigots of some sort. We succeeded by talking about not discriminating against people, and when it came to sort of gay rights and young people, by explaining to people who were anti-gay rights what had happened in the families of these young men in many cases, making it human. You have to persuade people by real experience as well as principle, not by threatening. Now, it seems to me, having seen on television, that some of these people went way beyond normal debate and harsh words in debate, and were actually trying to persuade people into violent acts, and that has to be where the line is drawn. The police, unfortunately, at the moment seem to be unable to distinguish between hard, harsh debate, which is part of a democracy, and those people who are threatening violence. People in Parliament Square were clearly threatening violence, and it is being threatened elsewhere. The police should deal with that.
Well, they should, but they probably won't. They haven't thus far. And isn't this the point? It seems you can be as threatening as you like towards women if you're a trans activist, but if you're somebody who objects to uncontrolled immigration, and you posted stuff after the Southport riots, you'd be in jail.
Well, 2 years. To carry on the point a bit further, it's not only that women may think that the Labour Party isn't covering itself in glory in this. We're opening ourselves to the charge of two-tier justice, which is out there on the streets. My constituents write to me and say there's two-tier justice precisely on the point of some of the comments after the girls were killed in Southport. Some of those comments, like the comments in Parliament Square, went too far, and people were prosecuted because they were threatening violence, burning down mosques, etc. But the same action does not seem to have been taken with other people, and it should. People should be equal before the law.
And that's a common sense view. Can I quickly ask you on another topic today, and that's the publishing of Migrant Crime League Table, something we've wanted for a long, long time here on GB News. We've pursued the Home Office endlessly. They claim to not have it. Now suddenly, hey presto, they do. It's going to be published. Do you support the public's right to transparency of crimes? Who from which country are committing particular crimes? Do you support that notion?
Absolutely. And one has to be careful. I know that in my constituency there are people who have committed very violent crimes who have not been deported. I've brought the matter up on time to time. I know where they... This sounds threatening. I know where they live. They don't live very far from me. That's not a thing. But those people should be deported, and collectively we should know which countries the major criminals are coming from. Otherwise we will speculate it's Albania or it's the West Indies or whatever.
But it is Albania. Total crime, Albanians 30 times more likely to be in jail. This is figures that we got ourselves from Centre for Migration Control. We had to do a workaround. Sex crime, Afghans 22 times more likely. Congo, violent crime 11 times more likely. Albanian drug crimes 153 times more likely. Graham Stringer, the truth is the truth. The facts aren't racist, and you're saying the public has a right to know them.
Absolutely. I didn't know those figures before I started answering that question. I'm not surprised by them, but I'm a strong believer in open government. And what earthly reason can there be for people not knowing that? Because if you don't know the facts, you can't work to the right policies and laws.
Well, maybe the facts might be an inconvenient truth, but nevertheless, the truth is the truth.
Truth is never inconvenient, really, when you're going to make laws and decide policies.
Graham Stringer, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today in the studio. It's a pleasure. As always, Catherine Fawcett, great to have you back. Thank you very much. See you in the next hour. Now, we've got some breaking news for you now on that topic of the trans ruling, because the SNP, the Scottish National Party, say that they do accept the Supreme Court judgment and have no plans to revive the gender recognition bill. So that was seen as another significant victory. This is live pictures of that debate happening now at Holyrood. The SNP, breaking news, Scottish National Party, say they do accept the Supreme Court judgment and have no plans to revive the gender recognition bill. There might be time for a second round of champagne corks popping from the women's activists. And to some more breaking news now. Just moments ago in Downing Street, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed the New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, expressing gratitude for New Zealand's support for the coalition of the willing. There's also a huge arms deal in progress, billions of pounds of arms deals between New Zealand and the United Kingdom. And we'll also be crossing live to the Vatican City next. There's some live pictures there. This is of Sir Keir Starmer with the New Zealand Premier. That's happening right now. That's the New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, and they are meeting to talk about trade partnerships and a significant armaments deal being done. I believe it's on drone warfare, drones that are Kiwi designed, made in Great Britain, and this is part of Sir Keir Starmer's EU reset and armaments deal. We're covering this later in the show. I believe we can hear them now. We'll cover it later in the show because some of the price worth paying, supposedly, we believe that the Prime Minister, is to give away more British fishing rights in return for this arms deal. And next, we're crossing live to the Vatican City as tributes continue to pour in for the Pope. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Welcome back. It's 3:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now for the latest on the sad death of Pope Francis. And Downing Street has confirmed the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, will attend the late Pontiff's funeral in Rome on Saturday. And the Prime Minister will join other world leaders at the ceremony at 9 a.m, including President Donald Trump. And a former member of the royal family is also expected to be in attendance. Let's cross live now to Ellie Costello, who is in St Peter's Square. Ellie, the world dignitaries are lining up to attend the funeral of the Pontiff. You're at the Vatican. Tell us more.
Yes, good afternoon to you, Martin. We've just come up above St Peter's Square now, where I've been all day talking to tourists who just so happened to be here for the Easter weekend celebrations when this news broke, and they made their way down to St Peter's Square today to be a part. Wanted to be there. They wanted to pay their respects, even if they weren't Catholic. They told me that they knew that this was a great good for the world. So let's have a listen to what those pilgrims and what those tourists told me earlier.
I think we hoped he would live forever. He was so wonderful. And for me at that moment, being a Catholic, it's like the world, the motion just stopped. And I was afraid for the world without him.
We've been blessed to see him twice here.
He is a massive person, especially in the religious world, so it's definitely an upsetting loss for the world.
We're glad to be here. And as odd as it sounds, it is history. He was big for equality and LGBT, and he was a change from the norm, and it's exactly where the world is going, and he married in with everything that where the world is going. So I think it was incredible. He was a good guy.
So in terms of what the next few days will look like, Martin, we've heard that breaking news in the past few hours or so that Sir Keir Starmer will be here for that funeral on Saturday morning. Donald Trump and Melania Trump will also be here. We know that a member of the British royal family will be in attendance. That's yet to be confirmed who exactly that will be. But speaking to tourists and pilgrims this morning, very much a sense that this is about honouring and mourning the late Pope Francis, but they are also aware that the big commemorations are later to come in the week. Just to give you a sense of what Saturday is going to look like, things are going to be quite different. Pope Francis planned this year before he died. He's asked for a really simple wooden coffin, very different to the popes that have gone before him, and he's going to be the first pope in over a century not to be buried in the Vatican tombs. Basilica. Instead, he's asked to be buried in Santa Maria Maggiore Church, which is in Rome. It's his favourite church in Rome, outside of the Vatican City, actually. And it was the church where he asked to visit before any foreign trip that he would go on. And it's also the church that he would return to once he came back to Rome. In fact, Martin, it was the church that after his 5-week hospital stay, in which he returned only a month ago, he asked to go to that church to give thanks to the Lord for bringing him back home to the Vatican. And we saw that pleasure and that joy at being back in the Vatican on Easter Sunday, didn't we, when Pope Francis was at his very best amongst his people. He was riding around in the Pope-mobile. Babies were being handed to him. He was blessing them. He was giving a thumbs up to the crowd, and that crowd so delighted to see him because, of course, it was a surprise appearance. He'd been told to take 2 months bed rest, but no one could keep Pope Francis down. He wanted to be amongst the people. I think when you hear the details of that funeral ceremony on Saturday, it is very in keeping with the man, a man of the people.
Ellie, wonderful report. And now the Pope has been laid to rest. The open caskets, we've seen pictures there Very solemn moment, 9 days of mourning before, of course, thoughts turn to the secret vote for the next Pope. Any information yet on who that may be?
Yes, Martin, already conversation turning to the conflate 15 days after the death of the Pope. So we are looking as though this is going to start to happen at the beginning of May. So traditionally, you would allow about 15 days because this was before the time of international flights when cardinals would be coming in from around the world. And now it is an important point to mention that Pope Francis actually appointed a number of cardinals from the global south. So they still do have a very long way to come, although there are now international flights. So they will be heading here in the coming days. They will be here for the funeral on Saturday. But already we're talking about runners and who could succeed Pope Francis. There's 2 Italian cardinals that are front runners at the moment. This is Italian Parolin. He's 70 years old. He is Italian. He's been described as Pope Francis's number 2. And the other Italian possibility has been working in Jerusalem for a number of years, for 3 decades, in fact. So he has been working very closely with Pope Francis, who's been very has spoken a great deal about Gaza and actually called for peace in Gaza on Sunday. But also, just to tell you quickly, Martin, about these 2 other options, non-European options. There's a Filipino cardinal and also potentially the first African Pope. One of the cardinals from Ghana, also one of the front runners. That is all to come in about 15 days' time, Martin. But in the meantime, this is about honouring Pope Francis and the great man he was behind for the Roman Catholic Church.
From Vatican City, thank you. We'll join you later in the show. Thank you. Now, moving on, got some more breaking news. The Royal Navy is deploying the largest maritime force of British combat jets since the Falklands War, and HMS Dauntless is setting sail right now. As you can see, live pictures on your screen. Let's cross now to GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's in Portsmouth. Mark, tell us more.
Well, we just heard one of the Isle of Wight ferries trying to steal the show there. Just crossed into the path of HMS Dauntless, going into her berth at the moment. But I can see a radar tower spinning on HMS Dauntless at the moment. She's about 20-25 minutes late in pushing off from the wall and coming out of the port because of quite a lot of maritime traffic in the port itself. But she is on her way and we will see her make slow but steady progress towards the main entrance to the port. And really there are thousands of people still gathered at various locations. You can probably hear the Royal Marines Band. Let's have a quick listen. Yeah, they're just about 50 feet away from me, just at the bottom of the round tower. We're on the round tower at the moment, which is just one of these locations that gives you an absolutely fantastic view of the passing shipping. And earlier we had the most amazing view of HMS Prince of Wales, that huge aircraft carrier that will head this carrier strike group as she left just after 1 o'clock this afternoon, and she's heading down to the seas off the Cornish coast, where the rest of the carrier group, including of course here HMS Dauntless, will assemble. Now, HMS Dauntless, I know you love your facts and figures, Martin, is a daring class guided missile destroyer. Although she's about half the length of HMS Prince of Wales. Actually, we're just going to get you, if Joe, our cameraman, can get a quick shot up into the sun, which can give you a look at a Wildcat helicopter that's just entered into the port as well. Now, I don't know if that is one of the Wildcats that's actually attached to Dauntless or not, but flying now right overhead of that Type 45 guided missile destroyer HMS Dauntless. And as I say, half the length of HMS Prince of Wales, but still 500 foot long. She's a big old girl, and 8,500 tons she weighs. She's got a crew of just under 200, and many of the crew members have actually got up onto the deck to assume the position for what's known as Procedure Alpha, where, of course, those embarked crew will really just line the deck there to salute the passing crowds and passing ships as this vessel leaves the port. And she will make up the carrier strike group, a potent defence for that strike group as a guided missile destroyer. She will offer protection from aerial threats, and she'll be joined this afternoon by the Type 23 frigate HMS Richmond, which is leaving the other main Royal Naval base further along the south coast in Plymouth, and departing just shortly after HMS Richmond will be a Canadian frigate, His Majesty's Canadian ship Ville de Quebec. That has been provided by the Canadians for this deployment, one of the most significant deployments for the Canadian military in a very, very long time. They're quite excited to be heading to the other side of the world as part of this carrier strike group. And that's not all the international makeup of this carrier strike group. We have a Norwegian frigate and a Norwegian support ship, which as we speak are leaving Norway to head to the seas of Cornwall, and they'll also be joined by a Spanish naval frigate as well. And included in the task group, the carrier strike group, will also be an Astute class attack submarine, which will provide protection under the waters for that carrier strike group as it makes its way, first of all, off the coast of France, where it will take part in a very significant naval exercise involving a number of other nations before heading down through the Mediterranean and through into the Middle East, of course, heading past through the Suez Canal, down the Red Sea, into what is a very contested area. We know only too well what has been happening in that area with the Houthis at the moment, that terrorist organisation which has been targeting shipping in the area. And that's why the carrier strike group will absolutely need, Martin, the services of a guided missile destroyer, an air defence asset like HMS Dauntless. She will be invaluable in offering protection not just to HMS Prince of Wales, but the other members of that carrier strike group as they transit this very contested, as I say, and quite dangerous part of the world.
Mark White, magnificent images, absolutely splendid. I've got severe job envy today. You're there by the seaside watching this beautiful craft set sail. What a place to be with an ice cream, perhaps a couple of beers. I digress. On a serious point, Mark White, Downing Street have said this sends out a powerful message that we mean business. What is that message, Mark White? What are they trying to convey? Rule Britannia?
Well, I think they are trying to show, that we, after years in which the military has suffered significant underfunding and the Navy, the Air Force, the Army have all been hollowed out, that Britain means business again and investing in our military prowess. And the Wildcat helicopter, as I speak, just heading past our position. Really impressive sight. These Wildcat helicopters will be joining the carrier strike group as well. At least 4 Wildcat helicopters, along with Merlin helicopters and, of course, the F-35 combat jet. there you go. I didn't want to speak while the foghorn was being sounded there, as a salute to the Royal Marine Band playing just below our position here, and actually playing We Are Sailing, that very famous maritime tune that accompanied that original documentary series about HMS Ark Royal back in the 1970s, at a time when we had a significantly stronger naval force than we do now. But we are regenerating. We are in the process of building 8 new Type 26 frigates. They'll be followed after that by a new fleet of destroyers. Type 31 frigates are being manufactured as well. All of that, as well as, of course, giving us capabilities to defend ourselves, Martin, also gives the military, so Wildcat just zooms past our position again, also gives the military industrial complex, all of the industries associated with defence in this country, a vital shot in the arm as well. It really accounts for many tens of thousands of jobs across the UK related directly to the defence sector. And you were saying, just to answer your original point, yes, it's absolutely about trying to show that after many decades of hollowing out, the government, this present government, is investing again in defence, 2.5% of GDP, with an aim, a stated aim, to increase that to 3% of GDP by the time of the next Parliament. And of course we are, as the Prime Minister has said, as many in the military will tell you, in a very uncertain time within the world. We only need to look at what is happening in Ukraine, what is happening in the Middle East with, as I mentioned before, the Houthis targeting not just Israel but targeting international shipping along the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. We only need to look at that to show you just how volatile things are. And this carrier strike group, without a doubt, as the Wildcat helicopter flies overhead of HMS Dauntless again, as I say, we only it's heading into this contested area, and it's perfectly possible, as Carrier Strike Group 21 4 years ago, that time headed by HMS Queen Elizabeth, found itself, when it was in the Middle East, deploying to strike targets, Islamic State targets in Syria. It's perfectly possible that this Carrier Strike Group and its F-35 combat jets may be called into action in the Gulf of Aden, in the Red Sea, against Houthi targets there. And then, of course, it heads towards the Indian Ocean, the Indo-Pacific, down towards China, Taiwan, and that very contested Strait of Taiwan. And we understand that Beijing won't like it, of course, but we understand that at least one ship from this Carrier Strike Group is likely to detach from that Carrier Strike Group and transit through the Strait of Taiwan to show, of course, that there is, international freedom of the seas, right of passage that the UK and other Western allies are determined should be exercised, that they should have access to these areas that may be claimed by China, but they are part of international seas.
Absolutely magnificent report, superb images, the helicopter, the ships. Mark White, you sound one breath away from singing Rule Britannia. And I'll tell you what, I think I'm with you. It's superb to see this. It really, really is. Mark White, excellent. What a great way to spend a day. A display of naval power. Magnificent there from Mark White down in Portsmouth. Now, we've got some more breaking news for you on a very busy day, and it's this. British Steel has said that it will end the consultation on up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of the firm earlier this month. In plain language, that seems to mean that those jobs will be saved. In Southport, 2,700 jobs appear to have been saved in a dramatic intervention by the government. British Steel has said it will end a consultation on up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of the firm earlier this month. If you recall, Parliament was recalled on that Saturday to push that through. 2,700 jobs seem to have been saved in Southport. We'll have more on that, of course, later in the show. But for now, if you're in search of some holiday sun, then here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It was a bit of a mixed picture for many of us over the bank holiday weekend, and there are still some showers around, particularly across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands too, though perhaps some sunnier spells here. But it is looking a little bit drier across parts of Spain and Portugal on Wednesday. Still plenty of showers on offer though for parts of Italy, Greece and Turkey as well. Temperatures for most of us in the high teens or low 20s. The best of the temperatures over the next couple of days, definitely across the Canary Islands, with highs here of 24 or 25 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening and overnight, heavy outbreaks of rain moving their way in from the west, turning blustery at times, but across northern areas it should remain largely dry. And the reason for this unsettled spell of weather is all thanks to low pressure swirling around, eventually bringing outbreaks of rain at first towards Northern Ireland this afternoon, eventually sweeping its way into parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, and then moving its way eastwards across central and southern parts overnight. Once again, some quite heavy outbreaks of rain at times, turning quite blustery too, leading to quite a wet start across central areas and parts of the southeast. But across the far north of England, Scotland, later on in the night across Northern Ireland, it should remain largely dry with some clearer spells. So a little bit chillier here, but elsewhere it's going to be a largely mild night thanks to the cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a fairly wet start, particularly across parts of the southeast central areas. Still a chance of some heavy outbreaks, a few showers just clipping into Devon and Cornwall. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier start, plenty more clearer skies compared to this morning. And across Scotland, northern parts of England, a mix of cloud and some brighter spells, some showers and also some longer spells of rain, particularly across Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed bag as we head into Wednesday morning. Any outbreaks of rain across the southern half of the UK, largely fizzling out through the morning, but it is going to leave behind plenty of clouds, still a chance of some light outbreaks of rain. A few more sunny spells across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, Northern England, but still can't rule out some showers here. Once again, these could be heavy at times, but where you catch the brighter weather, the sunshine, highs of around 17 Celsius, particularly across the southeast, so still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Through into the evening, we'll see once again a mix of clouds, still a few showers, eventually fizzling away across parts of Scotland, but some low clouds starting to edge its way into North Sea coast. And for the rest of the week, there is still a chance of rain, particularly in the west. Otherwise, plenty of dry weather and temperatures improving day by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, moving on, the government has announced its plans to publish the nationalities of foreign criminals awaiting deportation by the end of the year. Now, the Conservatives have been claiming it as their victory, including Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick.
So some good news just in. Almost exactly a year since I tabled an amendment to force the publication of data on crime by nationality. It looks like it's finally going to happen. The cover-up is coming to an end.
Aside from the obvious question that they could have done that while they were in 14 years of power, I'm now joined in the studio by the Shadow Crime and Policing Minister, Matt Vickers. Matt, welcome to the show. A pleasure to have your company. They've seen the censors. They're going to publish this data at last. What do you think made them have this light bulb moment?
It's gone on forever, and the commitment is only to publish it by the end of the year. But it's progress, But the problem is, we all know the story that it's going to tell. We've seen some of the horrific figures that people looked at with populations in prison and how that compares to the population of these foreign national offenders. Horrendous situation, but we've got to take it another level. We've got to take it beyond what these stats are going to tell us and what we're actually going to do about them. There's a stat there for the prison population. You are 30 times, not 3 times, not 13 times, 30 times more likely to commit an offence that puts you in prison as an Albanian in this country than you are as a normal British citizen. That is just balmy, that is bonkers, and we've got to do something about it. It's all well and good putting this data out there, and it's the right thing to do. The British people who pay their taxes, who pay for this, whose family members might be the victims of this crime, deserve to know that data, deserve to make informed decisions about the way that we handle immigration in this country. But what are we going to do about it?
Part of the issue here, Matt, is that the data does exist because Centre for Migration Control, GBNews, we've kind of squeezed it out of them. Police forces do take the nationality of people at point of arrest, and you can extrapolate that against populations. Sex criminals, 22 times more likely to be Afghanis. Drug criminals, 153 times more likely to be Albanians. This data is going to put a rocket up the notion of the open borders dream, is going to put a rocket up the idea of the multicultural dream. So why are the Labour Party putting it out there?
Well, when you have these discussions around tables, and people will tell you you're horrible, you're racist, you're making up all these accusations about this. It's there in black and white for all to see, and it's going to be there even more so for all to see. This data should have been published long ago. It's right that it's being published, but it's about what you're going to do. What are the consequences of knowing that mass immigration has huge costs on this front as well as every other front? We talk about people in hotels, we talk about the cost of the NHS, we talk about the pressure on housing in this country, but then we look at these crime stats and they are eye-watering, they're horrific. But what we've seen recently, we saw the government bring forward its own borders bill, its border security bill, and we saw amendments led to that. We saw an amendment that said we should disapply the Human Rights Act from cases that relate to immigration. So we saw the nutty outcome where someone said their son doesn't like foreign chicken nuggets, and despite being a criminal offender, got to stay in the country. In these cases, they infuriate the British public, absolutely infuriate them. So we put an amendment down. We said we would disapply the Human Rights Act from such cases. We put another amendment down. So in this country, you go and commit a criminal offence. You have to be convicted and face a sentence of more than a year in order to be deported. We said, no, disapply that. If you come to this country and you commit an offence, you should be sent home.
We've got to leave it there. Matt Vickers, thank you very much for joining us, Shadow Minister for Crime, Policing and Fire. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, coming up next, British Steel appear to have scrapped plans to sack people off at the steel plant in Southport. That's next with me, Martin Daubney on GB News. Now's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening and overnight, heavy outbreaks of rain moving their way in from the west, turning blustery at times, but across northern areas it should remain largely dry. And the reason for this unsettled spell of weather is all thanks to low pressure swirling around, eventually bringing outbreaks of rain at first towards Northern Ireland this afternoon, eventually sweeping its way into parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, and then moving its way eastwards across central and southern parts overnight. Once again, some quite heavy outbreaks of rain at times, turning quite blustery too, leading to quite a wet start across central areas and parts of the southeast, but across the far north of England, Scotland, later on in the night across Northern Ireland, it should remain largely dry with some clearer spells. So a little bit chillier here, but elsewhere it's going to be a largely mild night thanks to the cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a fairly wet start, particularly across parts of the southeast central areas. Still a chance of some heavy outbreaks. A few showers just clipping into Devon and Cornwall. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier start. Plenty more clearer skies compared to this morning. And across Scotland, northern parts of England, a mix of cloud and some brighter spells. Some showers and also some longer spells of rain, particularly across Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed bag as we head into Wednesday morning. Any outbreaks of rain across the southern half of the UK, largely fizzling out through the morning, but it is going to leave behind plenty of clouds. Still a chance of some light outbreaks of rain. A few more sunny spells across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, Northern England, but still can't rule out some showers here. Once again, these could be heavy at times, but where you catch the brighter weather, the sunshine, highs of around 17 Celsius, particularly across the southeast, so still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Through into the evening, we'll see once again a mix of clouds, still a few showers, eventually fizzling away across parts of Scotland, but some low clouds starting to edge its way into North Sea coast. And for the rest of the week, there is still a chance of rain, particularly in the west. Otherwise, plenty of dry weather and temperatures improving day by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A9 northbound at Dalrioch is currently facing restrictions due to a road traffic collision, so proceed with caution. In Surrey, a broken down vehicle on the M3 westbound between Junction 3 and Junction 4 has resulted in one-lane closure. Heading to the county of Herefordshire, the A49 southbound between the A438 and the junction with the A465 is completely closed due to a collision. All lanes remain shut. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, we've got some breaking news. The former senior circuits judge, Deborah Taylor, has been appointed to chair the statutory inquiry into the systemic failures to stop triple killer Valdo Calacane. On today's show, I'll be joined in the studio by the families of the deceased who say wrongs will be righted. We will make sure of that, whatever it takes. And first, Keir Starmer claimed it wasn't right to say that women can have cervixes. And then he said that only 99.9% of women cannot have a penis. Well, today he declared a woman is an adult female. Today, I'll ask one of his MPs, has the Prime Minister finally made up his mind? And for months, GB News has called for crime data by nationality to be published for foreign offenders. Time and time again, the Home Office claimed that they didn't have the data. Well, today, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has announced they do have the data after all. And furthermore, they will publish it. And by the end of the year, what took them so long? And will the uncomfortable data, the hard truths, destroy the myth of the multicultural dream? And today, John Morris, a World War II Special Forces veteran and hero, celebrates his 103rd birthday, 103. John is the oldest of the Chelsea pensioners still with us, and his father fought at both Somme and Ypres. Well, today, he joins me in the studio with SAS hero Matthew Hellier to celebrate an extraordinary, heroic life. And that's all coming on today's show. Well, the show's a pleasure to have your company. It's not every day you get to share a studio with a 103-year-old Special Forces World War II veteran. I cannot wait for that. And we also have some breaking news for you this hour, and that is Southport. British Steel, it appears, has been thrown a huge lifeline. The breaking news is the redundancies scheme has been shelved. 2,700 jobs at British Steel look set to be saved in a dramatic intervention, of course, after Parliament was recalled last Saturday. 2,700 jobs saved in a huge life-saving mission for British industry. We'll have more on that throughout the rest of this hour with our political editor, Chris Hope. He'll have all the latest from inside Downing Street. Get in touch the usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But that's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 4. The top story, the Vatican has confirmed Pope Francis's funeral will take place on Saturday this weekend at 10 a.m. local time on the steps of St Peter's Basilica. We also now know that the Prince of Wales is to attend that funeral on behalf of the King. Kensington Palace announcing that news in just the last few minutes. His body, the Pope that is now lying in an open coffin at his Vatican residence before being moved tomorrow for 3 days of public mourning. World leaders, including Donald Trump, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prince of Wales, as we now know, Sir Emmanuel Macron, Volodymyr Zelensky, and others are among those set to attend. The Pope requested a modest ceremony, though, and he'll be buried not at St Peter's, but in a church dedicated to the Virgin Mary in central Rome. The UK's economic growth forecast, has been cut from 1.6% to now 1.1% by the IMF. It's a downgrade, but still slightly stronger than the official prediction used by the Chancellor. The IMF's report today doesn't suggest a worsening fiscal outlook, but warns things could shift, especially after Donald Trump's new tariffs. Economists say Rachel Reeves is only just meeting her financial rules. So if growth weakens further, tax rises could still be on the table this autumn. But for now, the outlook remains uncertain. Well, that turbulence has already hit markets today, gold reaching a record high as investors flocked to safer assets. It follows Trump calling the Federal Reserve chairman a major loser for not cutting interest rates. The outburst sent US stocks and the dollar tumbling yesterday, though markets elsewhere have steadied somewhat. Sir Keir Starmer no longer believes transgender women are women, according to his official spokesman. It comes after the Supreme Court ruled that under the equality law, a woman is defined by biological sex. The Prime Minister said the judgment brings much-needed clarity and welcomed protections for single-sex spaces. Asked about using preferred pronouns, his spokesperson declined to comment, but said trans women deserve dignity and respect. Sir Keir Starmer had previously said trans women are women, but now says a woman is an adult female. That breaking news we brought you in the last half hour or so that British Steel has today scrapped plans for up to 2,700 redundancies. That's after the UK government took control of the company earlier this month. The firm has said today that it's now able to keep both of its blast furnaces running continuously. Interim Chief Lisa Coulson thanked staff and unions for their extraordinary dedication through what she called a difficult and a worrying time. She confirmed the consultation is closing without action. It follows new legislation passed to help stabilise operations. The government will publish for the first time the nationalities and crimes of foreign offenders living here in the UK. More than 19,000 foreign criminals were awaiting deportation at the end of last year, up since the Conservatives left office. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has ordered officials to release the data by the end of this year. Sources say the most common nationalities are Albanian, Romanian and Polish, with offences including drug production, theft and violent assault. Labour says it is now taking action that the Tories failed to, while the Conservatives claim the government has buckled under pressure. Meanwhile, the Conservatives have announced plans to scrap non-crime hate incidents. The opposition leader, Kemi Badenoch, has proposed a new law to protect free speech that she says would ban police in almost all cases from collecting personal data where no crime has been committed.
This is really important because what we're seeing is a lot of police time being wasted on people not liking something they saw on social media. I think I saw one about a mobility scooter on a pavement. We've spent about 60,000 hours of police time on this when they should be out there catching real criminals. And this is one of those things which, when we were in government, we gave guidelines on how they should use these. The police have not followed them, so it's time to just get rid of them completely. The police should be focusing on real crime, not non-crime.
And HMS Prince of Wales and in the last few minutes, HMS Dauntless have set sail from Portsmouth on one of the Royal Navy's largest deployments to date. HMS Dauntless there setting sail, but earlier HMS Prince of Wales, the £3 billion aircraft carrier, set off to lead that multinational strike group to 40 countries across Europe, Asia and the Middle East. It's carrying up to 24 stealth jets, drones, helicopters and more than 1,600 personnel, all as part of Operation High Mast. Commanders say the ship is ready to switch to active operations if global events demand it. The mission is expected to last 8 months, with all 2,500 military UK personnel expected to be back in time for Christmas. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. I'll be back with you for a look at the top stories in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now we've got some breaking news just coming in for you, and it's this. It's just been confirmed that Prince William, the Prince of Wales, will attend Pope Francis's funeral in Rome on Saturday, representing his father, King Charles III. And he will join the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and also President Donald Trump, amongst other world leaders, in mourning the late pontiff. And the funeral will take place at around 9 a.m. on Saturday. Just to repeat that breaking news, Prince William, the Prince of Wales, will be the royal appointment at Pope Francis's funeral in Rome on Saturday. Now, moving back to some more breaking news, this time domestically. British Steel has scrapped plans for up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of the company earlier this month. The firm says it's now able to keep both of its blast furnaces running continuously. And Interim Chief Lisa Coulson thanks staff and the unions for their extraordinary dedication through what she called a difficult and worrying time, and she confirmed the consultation is closing without action. Now, this dramatic news follows new legislation passed on Saturday to help stabilise operations. And we're joined in the studio in Westminster by our political editor, the best in the business, Chris Hope. Chris, a pleasure to have your company. This is a significant victory for working class Britain. I mean, this is what the government promised, 2,700 jobs snatched from the jaws of defeat. It's a result primarily for the people of Southport.
It's a result in spending money in Scunthorpe, but
we're on the hook now for lots of losses. This plant is losing £700,000 a day. That is racking up. Essentially, it is proving the status quo that the state now owns that Scunthorpe plant. We are writing the cheques for the pay packets. We are, Jonathan Reynolds is in charge of the HR. These are two furnaces. They date from 1930s, 1950s. They're called Queen Anne and Queen Bess. They need refurbishing to last another 20 years. You know, reforms, Richard Tyson says you can do that. We'll wait and see. For me, it's just recognising the reality that this plant now has been all but nationalised. The government says it wants to bring in private sector investment, maybe alongside the state, but really we're on the hook for this plant now. And yeah, that's good news for the people who work there and the wider people living near Scunthorpe. But we haven't got a lot of money to spend in this country, and other priorities too.
And politically, it's fascinating because, as you say, there's a convergence of people like Nigel Farage, Richard Tice from Reform, Jeremy Corbyn. Wanted to do things like this if he were ever to have been made Prime Minister, and now Sir Keir Starmer, suddenly the race to be the champion of industrialisation in Britain, and for the Labour Party especially, an astonishing position. A few weeks ago, they were dead against blast furnaces and their net zero carbon footprint.
It's re-industrialisation, and whether Donald Trump would approve the state being on the hook for supporting this plant, which according to the Chinese owners couldn't make money and was near to closing. It's great that we have it. We need the steel for our railway lines, to make the defence spending we need to do over the next few years as we drive that up. But they've got to make this business make money, and that might take some time.
Is its job to make money, or is its job to be a key strategic sovereign industry to help? Those millions of homes won't build themselves without British steel. Even theme parks in Bedfordshire won't build themselves without British steel. Is it more than just pounds and pence? Is it something else? Is it a sovereign, standalone industry?
That is the justification that the Prime Minister used. He called it a sovereign requirement to have this operating. I remember the day it happened on that Friday. Maurice Glassman came into GBNews studios on the Sabbath, and as a Jew, he'd be marking that. But he wanted to come in and talk about. He said, finally, what a government here doing what Labour government should do, which is take over these industrial premises, these sites, and run them for the state. But there's going to be a bill for that, and others, maybe like John Redwood, may be concerned about that.
And that you're exactly right to mention Mr Redwood. He's going to join us next, and particularly after Port Talbot, of course, closed down before many people thought maybe this intervention should have occurred then, but the timing wasn't right.
But the fight in politics is exactly here. It's where Reform UK meets Labour. Reform UK have been saying for 3 or 4 years to nationalise this plant. Labour's come in and done it. Reform UK was saying cut the aid budget, spend that money on defence. Labour are doing it. Where those two parties intersect is the battle, I think, in politics right now.
OK, well, I wonder if we can join our next guest now and bring in the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Sir John Redwood. Sir John, a pleasure to have your esteemed company, as always, but especially today. Where do you stand, Sir John, on the spectrum of we need key strategic sovereign industries and the fact the taxpayer is now footing a bill of some 700 grand a day?
Yes, we need strategic industries. No, it was wrong to have plans to kill off all our virgin steel making and replace it with electric arcs. My worry is that this is a convenience to get Labour through May the 1st and some difficult elections in the area. And I'd like to know how long the promise is to these workers that these jobs are going to be supported by large amounts of taxpayer money, because I think their plan is still to close these blast furnaces and replace it with an electric arc furnace, which will be much less job intensive and will mean we don't have the full spectrum of things we can do with the qualities of steel we can make without imports. So there's no substitute, I think, for a proper agreement with the existing owners, the Chinese, to get us out of that, because I think there's a lot of muddle over who pays the bills and who cashes up the money at the end when the Chinese finally waved out and we have a proper nationalisation. And I think there's a lack of clarity over where they're going to find the private capital from, because as Chris has rightly said, these are very old blast furnaces and they haven't been relined anytime soon either. And when you reline, that's a big job. You've got to close the furnace down, start again on the inside of it. That's a big, expensive job and an interruption to your production. Where are the plans for all of that? Because if they don't have plans for that, they're not actually serious about keeping these blast furnaces other than in the short term. And why are we still not getting an accurate estimate from the Treasury, or best estimate from the Treasury, of what this is going to cost? They should know, because they've been poring over the books of this company ever since they got into power.
And I wonder, Sir John, do you find it ironic that there is this competitive nature to be the most socialist, in as far as we've got the likes of Nigel Farage and Richard Tice adopting the position of Jeremy Corbyn, and now Sir Keir Starmer has weighed that in. They want to nationalise things. Who'd have thought that the political extremes, opposites, if you like, would suddenly meet in the middle?
Well, this is raw politics ahead of some difficult mayoral elections in the area of Scunthorpe and local elections, and I quite understand why the two parties are fighting over this. The irony is that I think practically everyone in politics or near British government wants to save these jobs, and now a lot more want to save the blast furnaces. But I'm still not persuaded that the government wants to save the blast furnaces in the longer term. And I'm quite sure they haven't done the sums properly and come up with proper budgets so that the taxpayer knows what we're in for. And I think both parties will come to regret it if there's a very big bill in a few months' time, and then we learn that actually these blast furnaces have to close anyway.
Yeah, so John, is Chris Hope here, just with Martin. Was it right or wrong for your government to sell this plant to the Chinese in the first place?
Well, I think they tried their best by selling it. If you have an open competition and the Chinese win, and in those days China was thought to be a reasonable business partner, you go ahead. If then they let you down, you've got to take tough action to get yourself out of what turned out to be a mistake. But I think the world has changed so much since that deal was done a few years ago. The cost of energy has gone through the roof. The extra costs of our net zero policies have become ever more obvious. And so the plant we sold them became less and less productive and way out of order on world markets. And so naturally, the owner had a major problem. It is a problem which the British government has to help solve, because with the best of intentions, the British government helped create it.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. Sir John Redwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister, always a delight to have your company. Thank you very much for joining us on this day where it appears 2,700 jobs could be saved from going into the furnace in Southport. Now, moving on, Sir Keir Starmer has finally broken his silence on the Supreme Court's ruling that transgender women are not legally women.
Your response to last week's Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman?
I welcome the court's decision and ruling. I think it's very important that we've now got real clarity. I think that it's a good thing the Supreme Court have come to their decision. That does provide that clarity that I think will now enable us to ensure that all the guidance is in the right place, and to reaffirm something that I've long argued, which is about safe spaces for women.
Well, it took him long enough, but it seems like he's finally made up his mind. And for more reaction, let's speak with the director of the Women's Rights Network, Cathy Lockman. Cathy, welcome back. We had you in the studio, of course, on that historic Victory Day last Wednesday. Now it appears the Prime Minister has seen the light. Do you believe him? Or, I mean, from my point of view, he's had more positions on this than the Kama Sutra.
Yeah, it's extraordinary, isn't it, really? And, you know, it's good to build that golden bridge, really, so politicians can come and cross over that bridge and suddenly find out what a woman is. And, of course, many of us didn't need the clarity of the Supreme Court, although it was incredibly welcome for us, because we knew all along what a woman was, and we had to, you know, sit back and listen while Keir Starmer said that it was wrong to say that only women had a cervix and that 1% of women, in fact, had a penis. You know, startling things which we knew were falsehoods all along, and has needed the Supreme Court to tell him differently. But we're very glad that he's made this statement. You know, there's a lot of work to be done, and all politicians need to be really, really clear in relation to this. I noticed there's been matters discussed in Scottish Parliament today as well about not bringing back the gender recognition reform, and we're waiting down here in Wales as well for our own Welsh Government to sort of find their voices too. But you know, isn't it extraordinary, really? It's like the litmus test question for our time. And it doesn't just tell us, really, about the whole women's rights issue and whether politicians will stand up for women's rights, but whether they have the integrity or whether they will repeat a blatant lie and falsehood in front of the British public for fear of being attacked otherwise by extremists.
And Cathy, it's incredible that it takes a Supreme Court to make a Prime Minister make his mind up about something which a toddler can tell is true. But nevertheless, there we are. Do you, however, have any faith? The Holyrood today, the SNP have said they will also accept this, but we're learning as well that 28 NHS trusts across London are simply ignoring the rules. There's even a rebellion, it appears, from within the Labour Party on this. Do you have faith that despite the fact this is legally now precedented and set in cement, that people are just going to try and ignore it, that trans extremists will carry on regardless?
Well, women who've been, involved in this for at least the last decade will know how awful, how nasty, how toxic this has been. And it's come from one direction only. It's come towards the women who have dared assert their rights and stand up for their sex-based rights in law. It's been horrific. J.K. Rowling said she could have papered her house with the rape and death threats she's received. Many women, and you're not just myself, but many women have attended sort of meetings and various different events where we've had to sort of run the gauntlet of, horrendous banners outside sort of calling for our death and destruction, to be quite frank, chanting, saying some extraordinarily offensive things about us, wishing violence upon us. We've seen this in the rallies at the weekend as well, haven't we, really, with those awful threats being issued. And we've sat in meetings where there have been baying mobs outside, banging on the windows and trying to get in. I've been in many of those meetings myself. So the bravery of the women who brought this action before the Supreme Court for Women Scotland can't be, overstated, really, as is the case for all the women's groups involved in this, including the Women's Rights Network that I represent. And to go back to sort of one of your questions there, Martin, when you touched upon the NHS trusts, vulnerable women have been put in hospital wards that have purportedly been single-sex hospital wards, and there have been men in them. I'm a retired police officer. I've been fighting a long fight with the police service nationally, who've been determined to bring in opposite sex strip and intimate searching, and have sort of signed off on policies to do that. It's quite extraordinary, given all that they say about being dedicated to dealing with violence against women and girls. So we shouldn't underestimate how much huge organisations have been prepared to sell off women's rights and go along with this. It's going to take a long time to pull all those policies out.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, and that's the director of the Women's Rights Network, Cathy Lockman. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the show. And also thank you to you, Chris Hope. Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and it's our biggest prize to date. Your chance to enjoy as many getaways as you'd like in your very own 4-berth motorhome worth over 67 grand. And here's the details you need to enter.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:27 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. And now for the latest on the death of Pope Francis. And Kensington Palace has just confirmed in this past 15 minutes that Prince William, the Prince of Wales, will attend Pope Francis's funeral in Rome on Saturday, representing his father, King Charles III. He will join the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, and also President of America, Donald Trump, amongst other world leaders, in mourning the late pontiff. And the funeral will take place at 9 a.m. on Saturday. Let's cross directly now to Eddie Costello in St Peter's Square. Eddie, so Prince William will attend on behalf of the royal family. Over to you.
Yes, we've got that news in the last 15 minutes from Kensington Palace that Prince William will be attending the late Pope Francis's funeral on Saturday morning on behalf of the King. And I've just been taking a look at that guest list as it is starting to appear, Martin, and it is impressive. People from all around the world. We've got the Prince of Wales and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, of course, from Britain, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Emmanuel Macron of France, Giorgia Meloni of Italy, you would expect that considering it is in Rome, the King and Queen of Spain, Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, and of course President Donald Trump and Melania Trump of the United States. But it is worth noting that not everybody on that list is Catholic, and the late pontiff was neither a political leader nor was he a member of a royal family, and yet he has that soft power to bring together those political leaders and those members of royal families from around the globe. He would have had close relationships with a number of the people on these lists. He was vocal sometimes about their policies, sometimes critical, especially you can consider the Trump administration and Giorgia Meloni's governance in Italy as well. The late Pope was vocal against both of those administrations at times, and he was vocal on social justice issues. So you can see with that relationship between them all why they would want to be here on Saturday to pay their respects to the late Pope. So we know that the funeral will take place at 10 a.m. Italian time, that's 9 a.m. UK time. It will be in St. Peter's Square, and it will be a simpler affair to what we have seen from Pontiff's funerals in times gone by. It will be a simple wooden coffin, and he won't be buried in the Vatican. Instead, he's going to be buried in English, it would be St. Mary's Major Church in Rome. He's going to be buried there, the first Pope to be buried outside of the Vatican in over a century. So it's going to be days of mourning, days of reflection, Martin, before that big commemorative funeral on Saturday. And we now know a number of these world leaders will be in attendance.
And Ellie, of course, then after the days of mourning and the funeral, all eyes will then look ahead to perhaps who will be the next pontiff. What do we know about the potential runners and riders?
Well, it is one of the most secretive processes in history, isn't it, Martin? And it's incredible, really, the timing of that film Conclave with Ralph Fiennes and Stanley Tucci really bringing this process to life for so many people. I was just reading before I came on air to talk to you the number of people that are streaming Conclave just to try and get an understanding of what we're going to see in about 15 days' time. That is when the Conclave traditionally comes together. This is before those days of international flights, so there would need to be about a 2-3 week period before those cardinals came together from around the globe to vote in the Sistine Chapel for who will be the next pope. Conclave comes from the Latin word meaning key, and that is because they're quite literally locked in the Sistine Chapel. There is no connection to the outside world, and they vote up to 4 times a day, 4 different ballots a day, until one person has 2/3 majority. White smoke will then appear from a chimney in the Sistine, above the Sistine Chapel, letting the whole world know that there is now a new pope. And it is going to be interesting to see what happens, Martin. Will we continue with this liberal, progressive door that Pope Francis has opened? Will we continue on that path, or will we return more to a conservative, more traditional approach, which we saw with Pope Benedict? There are 2 Italian frontrunners that we can speak of. They are known to be close confidants of the late Pope Francis, but also we could see the first black pope, or potentially the first Asian pope, because Pope Francis has appointed a number of cardinals during his tenure, many from the global south, so we could see another pope of firsts, Martin.
Magnificent report there, Ellie Costello, live looking over St. Peter's Square in the background. Thank you very much for joining us from the Vatican City here on GB News. Superb. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including we're expecting a press conference from the Nottingham attack victims' families shortly. But first, here's your headlines, and it's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon from the newsroom at 4:33 exactly. As we were just hearing from Ellie Costello there in St. Peter's Square, we now know the Prince of Wales will represent the King at the Pope's funeral, along with the Prime Minister. It's taking place this Saturday. Other world leaders, including Donald Trump, will also be in attendance. The late pontiff, known as the People's Pope, died on Easter Monday, aged 88, after a stroke. His body will lie in state at St. Peter's Basilica from tomorrow, ahead of the funeral mass in the square. Sir Keir Starmer has called the Pope a quite remarkable man and said his legacy of fairness will endure. Earlier, Cardinal Nichols, who led a requiem mass in London, said Francis was filled with compassion, with mercy and irrepressible hope. The UK's economic growth forecast has been cut from 1.6% to now 1.1% by the International Monetary Fund. It is a downgrade, but still slightly stronger than the official prediction by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. The IMF's report doesn't suggest a worsening fiscal outlook, but warns things could shift, especially after Donald Trump's new tariffs. Economists say Rachel Reeves is only just meeting her financial rules, so if growth weakens further, tax rises could still be on the table this autumn. Well, that turbulence is already hitting markets today. Gold reaching a record high as investors flock to safer assets. It follows Donald Trump calling the Federal Reserve chairman a major loser for not cutting interest rates. The outburst sent US stocks and the dollar tumbling yesterday, though markets elsewhere have steadied. Breaking this afternoon, British Steel has scrapped plans for up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of the company earlier this month. The firm says it is now able to keep both of its blast furnaces running continuously. Interim Chief Lisa Coulson has thanked staff and unions for their extraordinary dedication through what she called a difficult and worrying time. She confirmed the consultation is closing without action. It follows new legislation passed to help stabilise operations. A judge-led public inquiry into the Nottingham attacks that left 3 people dead has been confirmed in Parliament. University students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, along with school caretaker Ian Coates, were stabbed to death by Valdo Callaghan last June. He had paranoid schizophrenia and admitted manslaughter and was sentenced to a hospital order in January. Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood says the inquiry will be statutory and chaired by Her Honour Deborah Taylor. It follows fierce criticism from the victims' families and several reviews into how the case was handled. And Sir Keir Starmer says that he no longer believes transgender women are women, according to his official spokesman. It comes after the Supreme Court ruled that under equalities law, a woman is now defined by biological sex. The Prime Minister said the judgment brings much-needed clarity and welcome protections for single-sex spaces. But asked about using preferred pronouns, his spokesman declined to comment, but said trans women do deserve dignity and respect. You're up to date just after 4:30. A full roundup with the news here at 5. Next, though, let's take a look at those markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
So here's how the markets are shaping up this hour. The pound will buy you $1.3374 and €1.1665. The price of gold, £2,577.79 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,286 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Currently, Northamptonshire's A14 westbound exit slip at Junction 3 in Rothwell is closed due to a medical emergency, expected to clear by 5:15 this evening. Meanwhile, Oxfordshire's A34 northbound is partially blocked between junctions with the A44 and the M40 due to a broken down vehicle, causing delays of around 10 minutes, anticipated to clear by 4:30 this afternoon. Additionally, in Surrey, the M25 anti-clockwise has 2 lanes closed between Junction 9 and Junction 8 due to a collision, expected to resolve just after 5. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
People sometimes think that if someone is homeless, they're not trying for work, or I mean, you clearly have been.
Yes,
but
yes.
just not getting enough to actually be able
That's
to
the thing.
fund what's so expensive.
When you're self-employed, anyone who's self-employed will understand me that it's got its moments of being busy and quieter.
And have you experienced that stigma of being homeless and not having anywhere to call home?
Yes, I definitely have. I felt it through losing friends. I've realised who my true people are, I would say. It's crazy how humanity still exists. More recently than not, I put a post out saying I didn't have anywhere to go one of the nights. And I was in the council the next day and I needed to be in Windsor because the council are nearby. And a couple of people reached out that I didn't even know, a couple, and I stayed at theirs. And they even gave me a warm meal. So humanity does exist. And but where's my friends in all this, you know?
Yeah.
A few friends have stepped up a little bit more now. and realised this is, you know, become a problem. When they've seen me and actually spoke to me properly and realised this is what I'm going through, they've helped me and let me stay on the sofa or, you know, but it's all temporary.
Just briefly, what about charities in all of this? Are they able to help?
Crisis and Shelter I've just gone around in circles with. I haven't got any direct help so much. Not been able to get through to anyone. I've wrote to them, I've emailed them, I've Instagrammed them. But the only charity that has helped me, and it's a kind of an unusual one, is Dogs Trust.
Oh, right.
Because I walk dogs, I've been in contact with them to help the homeless dogs get rehomed. I was supporting them, and then all of a sudden they've pulled me in and said, look, you should come down to the Newbury Dogs Trust in Berkshire. We can support you. We have this together through homelessness.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Sir Keir Starmer is reportedly ready to allow France and other European Union nations to maintain post-Brexit fishing rights in the United Kingdom waters so British defence firms can sell weapons to member states, well, leading to accusations, of course, of betraying British fishermen once again. We can now speak with the fisherman from Great Yarmouth, Paul Lyons. Paul, it's always an absolute pleasure to have your company. Paul, you've seen this coming and you've seen this going year after year after year. Fishermen, our fishing quotas, our stocks being used as pawns in the political game. Does this come as any surprise to you, Paul Lyons, that once again you might be getting that sinking feeling?
Not at all, Martin. Anyhow, good afternoon, Martin. Not at all, because that just seemed, as all fishermen ever get, is betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. There's no other country in the world that's an independent coastal state that would ever dream of giving up the gold and the fortune the sea can bring to its coastal communities. We were so looking forward for Brexit to happen. It never happened. We were so looking forward for when they talk about the Trade and Cooperation Agreement deal that we would get the waters back and we'd get the fish back and we could even license foreign boats to come in our waters to help rebuild our local fleets. But no, he want to now play war games with trading off a little bit of fish to start playing war games in Europe and Ukraine. Well, what he want to do is he want to think who he's got to send out there to fight, because what I know and what I see around me, we've got an army coming across that channel that he got to cope with first. Who's he going to get pull these triggers on these guns? Because that's a joke. Everything has become a joke we're getting now. Fishermen just get pushed in the long grass and forgotten about. Till that come to war and they want minesweepers, that's just an absolute carve-up. And Europe, how much more can they have? They've got it all now. We've got nothing left. We sit there messing about in little boats, trying to get a living, and, you know, what are they got to reduce us to? Or do they want us finally gone? So the nail is right in the coffin, and the British fishing industry is dead and forgotten about. And then what they got to trade off? They'll trade farmers off next. They'll have Frenchmen growing spuds in our farmers' fields. That's got absolutely pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. I've got no trust, and I'm never going to trust a politician again. Because they you know, they're like kippers, aren't they? They're two-faced and gutless.
Well, Paul Lyons,
I'm sorry, Martin, but I feel so bad about this.
No,
what
Paul,
are young boys in our little ports going to do? They were relying on the fact that they won't get fished out of the sea by huge boats. We've all got little boats left here, and we're fighting up against 20-metre beamers and things like that. Well, that's not on.
And Paul, you know, you always speak with such passion, and you know, you live and breathe this, and you know, you've seen the industry be crushed and decimated and carved up and be given away. Now, the British government would say there's this new defence fund. It's worth 150 billion euros, this European Defence Fund, and Britain wants to be a part of it. And particularly the French, Macron, has said, well, if Britain wants to be part of this defence fund, if they want to be able to sell British armaments into Europe, and the value of that is meant to be 150 billion euros, and a price to pay is the fishing quotas, which were meant to be stepping down, weren't they, slightly, so the French got less. But now Macron says, no, if you want a piece of the action in the armaments trade, then the price to pay, once again, is fishing stocks.
Well, don't people realise that you can sell £150 billion worth of weapons, but we're looking at food here. We're talking about one sector of food. And you can't eat guns, you can't eat war, but they're not securing the vital things that matter to populations is food and security. Food security in this country has gone downhill, that ain't gone up. And we could secure this food, but then again, that's all about big people making big money all the while. The little people are going to have nothing left here soon. And you know, I mean, my old man used to say to me, we're all but a number. I don't think we're a number anymore. We're just out there. But we're good enough to pay taxes so they can play games around the world. I sometimes think who the hell they think they are running around the world saying this and saying that. We're a little old country who want to keep our head down and look after ourselves and start putting some money in the banks. Because, you know what I see, we aren't that well off anymore. We're hardly a voice anymore. And...
OK, we have to leave it there. Paul Lyons, thank you very much for joining us there. A fisherman from Great Yarmouth. Paul, it's always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much. There he goes. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It was a bit of a mixed picture for many of us over the bank holiday weekend, and there are still some showers around, particularly across parts of Madeira, the Canary Islands too, though perhaps some sunnier spells here. But it is looking a little bit drier across parts of Spain and Portugal on Wednesday. Still plenty of showers on offer though for parts of Italy, Greece and Turkey as well. Temperatures for most of us in the high teens or low 20s. The best of the temperatures over the next couple of days, definitely across the Canary Islands, with highs here of 24 or 25 degrees.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening and overnight, heavy outbreaks of rain moving their way in from the west, turning blustery at times, but across northern areas it should remain largely dry. And the reason for this unsettled spell of weather is all thanks to low pressure swirling around, eventually bringing outbreaks of rain at first towards Northern Ireland this afternoon, eventually sweeping its way into parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, and then moving its way eastwards across central and southern parts overnight. Once again, some quite heavy outbreaks of rain at times, turning quite blustery too, leading to quite a wet start across central areas and parts of the southeast. But across the far north of England, Scotland, later on in the night across Northern Ireland, it should remain largely dry with some clearer spells. So a little bit chillier here, but elsewhere it's going to be a largely mild night thanks to the cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a fairly wet start, particularly across parts of the southeast central areas. Still a chance of some heavy outbreaks, a few showers just clipping into Devon and Cornwall. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier start, plenty more clearer skies compared to this morning. And across Scotland, northern parts of England, a mix of cloud and some brighter spells, some showers and also some longer spells of rain, particularly across Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed bag as we head into Wednesday morning. Any outbreaks of rain across the southern half of the UK, largely fizzling out through the morning, but it is going to leave behind plenty of clouds, still a chance of some light outbreaks of rain. A few more sunny spells across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, Northern England, but still can't rule out some showers here. Once again, these could be heavy at times, but where you catch the brighter weather, the sunshine, highs of around 17 Celsius, particularly across the southeast, so still feeling pleasant for the time of year. Through into the evening, we'll see once again a mix of clouds, still a few showers, eventually fizzling away across parts of Scotland, but some low clouds starting to edge its way into North Sea coast. And for the rest of the week, there is still a chance of rain, particularly in the west. Otherwise, plenty of dry weather and temperatures improving day by day. That's it from me. Bye-bye.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, claimed it wasn't right to say that only women can have cervixes. And then he said that 99.9% of women cannot have a penis. Well, today he declared a woman is an adult female. Now, the SNP say they accept the Supreme Court judgment and have no plans to revive the Gender Recognition Bill. How times have changed. And GB News reporter Tony Maguire has this report.
Afternoon, yeah, the Scottish Government has now given their official position following that Supreme Court ruling last week when 5 judges unanimously agreed that the definition of a woman for the purposes of reading the Equality Act was down to biological sex. Now, this ended a 7-year fight for women's groups in Scotland, particularly for Women's Scotland and Sex Matters, who have been up against the government on this issue for those 7 years since 2018. But of course, on the other side, trans groups here are now concerned and worried about escalating tensions in the wake of that result. Now, Cabinet Secretary for Social Justice Shirley-Ann Somerville, she spoke to Parliament this afternoon in a carefully crafted statement that said the Scottish Government has carefully considered the judgment and accept the court's definition of a woman. And critically, she said that the Scottish Government has no plans to bring back the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. Now, she said she has noted that the UK Government's proposals to reform the Gender Reform Act, although she said that she had not seen any move for any substantive changes to that effect. However, she said that gender recognition remains a vital piece of equality legislation here in the UK and should continue to do so. And she said it would be vital that the European Court of Human Rights issue practical guidelines on how to deal with this following the Supreme Court decision. She said she hopes that we can move to a point where where we can make meaningful progress towards equality again for people in Scotland. Now, her words were met by Russell Finlay, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, who asked for that cast iron guarantee that the Scottish Government would not try to resurrect the Gender Recognition Reform Bill through a back door or any other. And Jackie Baillie has encouraged the Scottish Government to get ahead and publish their best practice for dealing with these changes in relation to the law. Now, the Scottish Government has said that it is going to update its employment guidelines when it comes to gender, which is really how this whole issue started. But for a lot of people, they'll be glad that after years of fighting that this will be put to bed. But let's not forget the other side of the coin, where people do feel in the trans communities that this is a huge step backwards.
OK, thank you there, Tony Maguire. Now, in just a moment, Emma Webber, the mother of Nottingham stabbing victim Barnaby Webber, will give an update on the progress made towards a statutory public inquiry. And in advance of that, I'm now joined in the studio by GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, so the families of the bereaved are in London today. Of course, Barnaby Webber, Grace O'Malley Kumar and Ian Coates killed by Valdo Calacane in my home city of Nottingham. The statutory public inquiry is getting towards its initial stages. Tell us about the procedures today. What's happening today?
Yes, so the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, announced in Parliament just a little bit earlier that Her Honour Deborah Taylor, she's a retired senior circuit judge, she was resident at Southwark Crown Court. She will be chairing this full public statutory inquiry. What's important about it being a full public statutory inquiry is that they can have the power to compel witnesses, to force people to come and give evidence. That's what the families have been seeking. The full terms of reference will be published, they say, at the earliest opportunity. And the judge has already, before this, had a meeting with the families and discussions with them. So it can effectively get underway straight away. But the families have said that they have had to pretty much fight every step of the way to get to this point because, of course, it was June 2023, those horrific murders, those two young people, just 19, had finished their exams just on the way home after a night out. Barnaby and Grace, and then Ian Coates, a caretaker who was just about to begin his retirement. Absolutely horrific. And the families have been absolutely scathing as to what has gone on. They've spoken of failure, mistruths, incompetence and negligence by multiple agencies. And they've said that today, they hope, marks the beginning of uncovering the truth and addressing what went so catastrophically wrong.
Multiple attempts to intervene were missed, prevent the counter-terror force, Nottinghamshire Police, Leicestershire Police, NHS trusts, the mental health care providers in Nottinghamshire, Emma Webber, of course, the mother of Barnaby, and Dr. Sanjoy Kumar, father of Grace O'Malley Kumar, being particularly outspoken about that. We hope to have one or both of them join us in the studio soon. But they want results. We've got a quick 30 seconds. They want to see people arrested and maybe even in prison for this.
They do, and obviously nothing can bring their families back. But what they want is answers and for systems to change so that this can never happen again. He was a paranoid schizophrenic. He basically should not have been out loose on the streets. There was a report into NH failings, absolutely damning.
Thank you very much. And we'll be joined by, hopefully, Emma Webber later in the show. And also today, John Morris, a World War II Special Forces veteran, celebrates his 103rd birthday. He'll join me next in the studio. But first, here's your weather.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Drivers on the A4232 northbound should be cautious as the road is closed between the A48 interchange and the M4 junction 33 due to an accident. In Essex, the M11 southbound between junction 7 and junction 6 is facing lane closures following a collision, resulting in 2 of 3 lanes being unusable. Commuters in Surrey will encounter delays on the M23 southbound between junction 8 and junction 9 due to a broken down vehicle occupying 1 of 4 lanes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Today's show, breaking news. Former senior circuits judge Deborah Taylor has been appointed to chair the statutory inquiry into the systemic failures to stop the triple killer Valdo Calacane. Later in today's show, I'll be joined in the studio by the families of the deceased who say wrongs will be righted. We will make sure of that, whatever it takes. And first, Keir Starmer claimed it wasn't right to say that only women can have cervixes. And then he said 99.9% of women cannot have a penis. Well, today, the Prime Minister declared a woman is an adult female. So, as the PM finally made up his mind. And for months and months and months, GB News has called for crime data by nationality to be published for foreign offenders. And time again, the Home Office claimed they didn't have the data. But today, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has announced they do, after all, have the data. And furthermore, they'll publish it by the end of the year. What took them so long? And will the uncomfortable facts destroy the myth of the multicultural dream? And today, John Morris, a World War II Special Forces veteran and hero, celebrates his 103rd birthday. John is the oldest of the living Chelsea pensioners after his father fought at both Somme and Ypres. Well, today he joins me in the studio with SAS hero Matthew Hellier to celebrate an extraordinary and heroic life. And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. It's always a great, great honour to be in the presence of greatness, to be in the presence of a 103-year-old World War II veteran who lived and breathed and survived our greatest conflict, our greatest generation. I cannot wait to meet our next guest. I'm simply on the edge of my seat. 103 years old today. They don't make him like that anymore, and I cannot wait to hear his stories and celebrate our finest generation. I'll also be joined in the studio, hopefully very soon, by Emma Webber, the mother of Barnaby Webber, in London today as the statutory public inquiry commences its first proceedings, the initial stages towards justice for the families who lost their loved ones to triple killer Valdo Calacane. That's all coming in your next hour. Get in touch, usual ways. gbnews.com/your say is the way to do that. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. Tonight at 5, the Prince of Wales and Prime Minister will attend the funeral of Pope Francis this Saturday, alongside world leaders including Donald Trump. The late pontiff, known as the People's Pope, died on Easter Monday, aged 88, after a stroke. His body will lie in state at St Peter's Basilica from tomorrow, ahead of the funeral mass. Sir Keir Starmer called him a quite remarkable man and said his legacy of fairness will endure. Cardinal Nichols, who led a requiem mass in London, also said Francis was filled with compassion, with mercy and irrepressible hope. HMS Prince of Wales and, in the last hour or so, HMS Dauntless have both set sail from Portsmouth on one of the Royal Navy's largest deployments to date. Well, HMS Prince of Wales earlier, that is the £3 billion aircraft carrier set off to lead that multinational strike group to 40 countries across Europe, Asia and the Middle East. It's carrying up to 24 stealth jets, drones, helicopters and more than 1,600 personnel, all as part of Operation High Mast. Commanders say the ship is ready to switch to active operations if global events demand it. The mission will last just 8 months, with all 2,500 UK military personnel expected to be back home by Christmas. The retired judge who jailed Boris Becker and Julian Assange will lead the public inquiry into the Nottingham attacks, MPs have been told today. University students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, along with school caretaker Ian Coates, were stabbed to death by Valdo Calocane. Deborah Taylor was named in Parliament as the chair of the probe, watched on by the victims' families in the Commons. Barnaby Webber's mother says the victims paid the ultimate price for a shameful level of incompetence. The inquiry will examine how agencies handled Valdo Calocane before his deadly attack in June of last year. The Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood has promised it will work at pace and deliver findings as quickly as possible. British Steel has scrapped plans for up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of the company earlier this month. The firm says it's now able to keep both of its blast furnaces running continuously. Interim Chief Lisa Coulson has thanked staff and unions for their extraordinary dedication through what she called a very difficult and worrying time. She confirmed the consultation is now closing without action. It also follows new legislation passed to help stabilise operations there. Sir Keir Starmer no longer believes that transgender women are women, according to his official spokesman. It comes after the Supreme Court ruled that under equalities law, a woman is defined by biological sex. The Prime Minister said the judgment brings much-needed clarity and welcomed protections for single-sex spaces. But asked about using preferred pronouns, his spokesman declined to comment, but did say trans women deserve dignity and respect. Sir Keir Starmer had previously said trans women are women, but now says a woman is an adult female. Meanwhile, the government says it will publish for the first time the nationalities and crimes of foreign offenders living here in the UK. More than 19,000 foreign criminals are awaiting deportation by the end of last year. Those figures are up since Conservatives left office. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has ordered officials to release that data by the end of this year. Sources say the most common nationalities are Albanian, Romanian and Polish, with offences including drug production, theft and violent assault. The government says it is taking action the Tories failed to, while the Conservatives claim Labour has buckled under pressure. Meanwhile, the Conservatives have announced plans to scrap non-crime hate incidents, with opposition leader Kemi Badenoch proposing a new law to protect free speech that would ban police in almost all cases from collecting personal data where no crime has been committed.
This is really important because what we're seeing is a lot of police time being wasted on people not liking something they saw on social media. I think I saw one about a mobility scooter on a pavement. We've spent about 60,000 hours of police time on this when they should be out there catching real criminals. And this is one of those things which, when we were in government, we gave guidelines on how they should use these. The police have not followed them, so it's time to just get rid of them completely. The police should be focusing on real crime, not non-crime.
The UK's economic growth forecast has been cut from 1.6% to now 1.1% by the International Monetary Fund today. It is a downgrade, but still slightly stronger than the official prediction used by the Chancellor. The IMF's report doesn't suggest a worsening fiscal outlook, but does warn things could shift, especially after Donald Trump's new tariffs. Economists say Rachel Reeves is only just meeting her financial rules. So if growth weakens, tax rises could still be on the table this autumn. And that turbulence is already hitting markets today. Gold reaching a record high as investors flocked to safer assets. It follows Donald Trump calling the Federal Reserve chairman a major loser for not cutting interest rates. The outburst sent US stocks and the dollar tumbling yesterday, though markets have steadied elsewhere. You're up to date just after 5 o'clock. Plenty more still to come right here with Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back now. British Steel has scrapped plans for up to 2,700 redundancies after the UK government took control of their company earlier this month. The firm says it's now able to keep both of its blast furnaces running continuously. And I'm joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, a dramatic state of affairs, 2,700 jobs snatched from the jaws of defeat. They'll be breathing a sigh of relief in Southport, no doubt having a glass of beer too. Politically, isn't this fascinating? Because Nigel Farage, Richard Tice were the ones saying we should nationalise British Steel. Sir Keir Starmer seems to have got a taste for that. They're being very competitive about running British Steel.
Essentially what's happening here, Martin, is the process of losing these jobs has ended. That is what is going on here. You've got this issue here with concerns about the future of this plant. It's been saved essentially by basically being all but name nationalised. That vote in the House of Commons and House of Lords, when I was called back, of course, as peers and MPs were a week last Saturday, that was in order to give the UK government control over running British Steel. Don't forget there are two furnaces there, the Queen Anne and Queen Bess, dating from 1930s, 1950s. They need to be modernised and relined to have 20 more years' life. They've got 5 years' life at the moment left in both those. They're losing £700,000 a day at these plants. We are now on the hook for that. And I think the fact that the welcome news, of course, to Scunthorpe, but wider issues, as Sir John Redwood was saying, the former Tory cabinet minister on your show an hour ago, what is the final bill for us? What are we paying for here? Yes, we need the sovereign ability to produce steel for our defence industry or for rail tracks, and so it goes on. But what is the cost to the economy?
And the fascinating thing about this, is it really about the cost? Is it about something else? Is it about the ability? We'll be the only nation in the G20 that couldn't produce virgin steel from scratch, the strongest kind of steel, the steel we need for ships, for railways, for girders, for building back Britain. That's the kind of steel we need. Seems the Labour Party, who was diametrically opposed to blast furnaces only like a couple of weeks ago, have now gone full Farage.
Yes, I think this is something which is another example, I think, of where politics is fascinating right now, is where Reform UK meets the Labour Party. We saw that with cutting the aid spending to 0.3% anyway, cutting by a lot of our GDP in February, spending money on defence. That's a Reform UK policy, and so was this one. Also, question marks about what does Reform UK want? Are they a low-tax party that wants to nationalise big industries? How do you pay for that? Big question marks for Nigel Farage. We'll try and ask him that for GB News tomorrow when we're due to speak to him on St George's Day. So fascinating, I think, where politics is going right now.
Great stuff, Chris. And stick with us, because on the same topic, moving on, the government has announced its plans to publish the nationalities of foreign criminals awaiting deportation by the end of the year, something they said before they couldn't do because the data didn't exist. Well, suddenly it does. And joining me now to discuss this is the Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. Rob Bates, you're a man who's done more than anybody perhaps in Britain to get this data out there. You've had to do workarounds, you had to do FOIs, you had to approach police forces, you had to cross-tabulate that with census data to get the truth. By hook or by crook, you did it. And time again, Rob Bates, the Home Office, the government said, we don't hold this data, it doesn't exist. Suddenly, Rob, hey presto, it does. What's going on?
Yeah, although it seems that the Labour Party's plans are to not publish as much data as I think the British public are actually entitled to. This is, of course, only pertaining to those that are in the country awaiting deportation, which is around 20,000 people. As you say, we've been working long hours into the night to get our hands on actual data on convictions across the board, all those indictable offences. Between 2021 and 2023, there were over 100,000 convictions of foreign nationals in the UK. So I think that gives a scale of how little actually is being shown by these plans being put forward by Yvette Cooper. Of course, it's welcome that this data is being published, but we know that data that is far deeper and far richer does also exist inside the Ministry of Justice, and I would hope that ministers would eventually look to publish that data as well regularly, which we were told at one point by the Ministry of Justice that they would be doing from May, which they've since backtracked on as well. So, yes, it's an encouraging sign, but there is a lot more that needs to be done.
And Rob Bates, I wonder if we have some of the graphics of your data we can put on the screen now, because you've been working tirelessly on this for many, many months. Rob, just talking through quickly some of the stuff that you've come out with at the Centre for Migration Control. Sexual offences per 10,000. Rob, talk us through what we're seeing on our screen here. It shows the propensity of certain nationals to commit sex crimes far more in advance of Brits. Over to you.
Yeah, so if you look at the top two, you look at Afghanistan, you look at Eritrea, these are nationalities where individuals, once in the UK, are around 22 times more likely to be committing a sexual offence, including rape, than the British population. If you age adjust that, it falls to about 20 times, which is still a staggeringly high number. And the reason why this is important, Martin, is because we're running an immigration system at the moment that really doesn't distinguish between individuals from any nationality. It doesn't distinguish between a gang lord from Afghanistan and perhaps a retiree from Luxembourg. It's all welcome. And I think what we really need to see going forward with an immigration system is one that is far more strict on certain nationalities, those nationalities that show disproportionately high crime rates, and you know, start moving towards an immigration system where nationalities that we know have a much lower propensity to commit crime, as well as offering more economic benefits, are more likely to be admitted. But at the moment, as I say, it's come all.
And Rob Bates, an astonishing 87 nationalities are more likely to commit sex crimes as opposed to the British population. And we've got some other figures, I believe, on violent crime. It's the Congolese this time, who are 11.7 times more likely to offend versus Brits. Somalians in second place. We can see there the Brits are lowly down that list. And once again, Rob, 59 nationalities have a higher conviction rate of violent crime than Brits. It's the same for drug criminals, 153 times more likely to be an offender if you're Albanian. Rob Bates, all this data puts a powder keg under the theory of open borders, multiculturalism being a social experiment that's turned into a dream. It looks like a nightmare. The big question, Rob Bates, is this. When the government publishes their data, what will they do with it? Are they likely to start doing what a lot of people in Britain would like and start to deport these foreign criminals?
Well, that is the big question, isn't it? And of course, the Labour policy at the moment is primarily, I think, with this geared towards emphasising that they are stepping up the deportations. The numbers are still far too low, but they are still trying to make hay out of the fact that they're clearly improving on the Conservative efforts. But the fact of the matter is that those currently eligible for deportation are foreign nationals that have been convicted to a custodial sentence of 12 months or more. That is far too high a threshold for an individual to meet the criteria for deportation. We need to be realising that if an individual comes here and commits any crime, regardless of the sentence, that is something that has harmed the British public or put the British public in harm's way, or, you know, perpetuated the awful drugs trade or whatnot, then they need to be removed from the country. We can't simply allow those individuals at the very spearhead, the most pernicious crimes, to be the only ones to get deported. We need a much more holistic policy. I think the Labour Party are clearly trying to put this out there in the hope that people will start realising that they're serious about deportations. They're not serious about deportations. The numbers are far too small. And I think eventually what we'll see when these numbers do start coming out is that the Labour Party have made a rod for their own back, because we'll be able to draw much bigger conclusions about the sheer risk that we are being exposed to as a result of the open door experiment. Because, you know, going back to those sexual offence statistics, the top 25 nationalities in the UK that have committed sexual crimes, you know, we awarded nearly 60,000 visas to them last year. So I think it would be a fair guess to assume that maybe a few bad apples came through in those numbers. And I think the pressure will start to grow that we start having a really more restrictive immigration system, one that we actually used to have up until 2020, when the Home Office used to operate a bit more of a red list, and it would delineate between different countries on the propensity of individuals to commit crime. That doesn't exist at the moment. As I say, it's come all.
Well, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, has agreed to publish this data. It's also worth pointing out that, you know, we might find that we have Afghanis, Iraqis, Iranians, Syrians. Rob Bates, we couldn't deport a lot of those people if we wanted. We have no returns agreement, but at least for now, baby steps forward. Rob Bates, always a pleasure to have you on the show, Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control. Thank you very much. And thank you to you, Chris Hope. Now we have to move on to an exciting moment, massive, because John Morris, the World War II Special Forces veteran and hero, celebrates his 103rd birthday today. And he joins me next. You will not want to miss it. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
The
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. It is 5:22 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now today, the legendary John Morris, a World War II Special Forces veteran, celebrates his 103rd birthday. John, I believe, is the oldest of the Chelsea pensioners, and his father fought at both the Somme and Ypres. Well, the London Hells Angels and MCs have shown their respect by taking John on their bikes to the GB News studios earlier on as a special birthday gift to him. There we are. There is the man. There is the legend. And I'm proud to say he joins me now in the studio at GB News with his friend and my friend, and that is the SAS hero Matthew Hellier, to celebrate an extraordinary life. Gentlemen, first of all, may I shake the hand of a legend. What an absolute pleasure it is to have you in the studio. John Morris, Matthew Hellier also, mate. Thanks for setting this up. Let's start with you, Matthew. How do you introduce a legend like this? Well, you know the fella, so over to you.
easy. This man is an absolute legend. World War II hero, the only man surviving from his regiment, the Raiding Support Regiment, which was a Special Forces regiment in World War II. John joined the army at 17 years old, fought in the Battle of Britain before being shipped over to North Africa, fought all the way through North Africa before volunteering for Special Forces, and was dropped after fighting at Casino, then dropped into Montenegro, the Balkans, and trained Tito's forces and was demobbed in 1944. This man's 1945. This man's got a massive war record, and much respect to John. One of my best friends.
John, there you go. That's your intro. You've been through all of that. You've literally been through endless wars, and you've made it. You've made it to 103 years young. John Morris, how does that feel?
Well, I feel 150 at the moment. I've had a very tiring day.
Yeah.
No, I've had a wonderful day, thanks to Matt and Pilgrim Bandits, because they've been fantastic.
Yeah.
They hijacked me and got me here with the help of the Sun newspaper.
Yeah.
And Matt has been a complete great friend of mine ever since. Him and Jim Kearney. And the Sun newspaper also helped pay me to come here.
Fantastic.
Travelling business class, and the Australian Army gave me a corporal to accompany me to make sure I didn't go astray. I thought I was going to Hawaii, but they hijacked me.
And talk us about, this is your SAS, Berry, right?
This is John's Raiding Support Regiment.
This is
one of the famous
regiment.
wartime special forces.
That is the Raiding Support Regiment.
Wow.
I'm the last remaining member of this group.
And tell us, if you can, John, about some of those. I mean, we hear so often, I don't like to talk about the war, but John, people really love to hear about it because we have to try and keep the memories of the legends of our finest generation alive. Tell us about some of the scrapes you got into, what you remember from your time.
What do you want to know?
Some of the scrapes you got into, some of the heroic, valiant efforts you were involved in.
Sorry?
Tell us about some of your scraps in the war. Tell us about some of your scraps in the war.
How did I start the war?
No.
What about the time when you were anti-aircraft gun and you shot the chimney, John?
Oh,
That's a good story.
Yeah. When we first started the war, we were very low on armour. In fact, they gave us, all we had was a pickaxe handle.
Yeah.
No rifles were available because Dunkirk had just happened. And I joined the 89th Regiment. Unfortunately, they went overseas, so I had to transfer to the Essex Heavy Aircraft Regiment. And on the Battle of Britain, from the beginning, which was in July to October 1940, and I was on the mobile guns defending London and splitting up the aircraft going over. I was stationed for a while at Sittingbourne on the old 3-inch guns. They were very antiquated pre-war guns. And I was a gun layer. We sometimes spent 12 to 14 hours on the guns with non-stop because there's hundreds of German aircraft coming over. Our job was actually to split up the aircraft so the actual fighters would get at them. So right from July to October, sometimes we spent 12 to 14 hours sleeping on the guns. And I was only 17 years old.
Amazing. John, then parachuted in, about Montenegro and the Balkans. John, when you were training Tito's forces, that's an amazing story.
That's right. When we went to North, I went on after the Blitz, I went to Western-super-Mare where the bombing was taken place up in the Clyde because of the bombing in the Clyde. And after that, I went on Operation Torch. There was actually 107,000 troops going on that, 200,000 ships. That was on November the 8th, 1942, and with the American First Army. When we arrived at Algiers, the French started firing at us. They were siding with the Germans. So we actually, the British sunk 2 battleships, and they sunk 2 of ours, I think. the French. And there was 107,000 British and American troops. There was 200 actually boats took part in the operation. There was actually 3 battleships, 5 aircraft carriers, 7 cruisers, and 38 destroyers took part in the raid on North Africa in Algiers. On the way to, they sent us down because we didn't have any guns. Our boat carrying the guns was torpedoed. So they sent us down to Bone, waiting for reinforcements to come on. And obviously we were very bored stiff at the time. Anyway, short, I was a brain gunner, so he put me on top of this flat top group, and I had to fire with any low-flying aircraft trying to bomb the port of Bone. After a few months there, I got bored stiff and I got hepatitis and sent to a hospital. And when I came out of the hospital, the Radiant Support Regiment came around asking for volunteers, and I volunteered. Meantime, the Radiant Support Regiment, which you can see is a badge of the Radiant Support Regiment, I'm the last remaining member of that one at the moment. The rest have all gone.
And you're 103 today. I think we've got some pictures of you arriving, a spectacular arrival today. You've got a motorbike escort. So let's get those pictures up on screen if we can. And Matthew, talk us about, oops, there we go, the balloons have got a mind of their own. Look at this. So there you are, you've got a tin hat on. You're going along, that's you there, Matt. Talk us through where you've come from and about this journey.
We picked John up from the Royal Hospital, Chelsea. He had an entourage of motorbikes from the Hells Angels and the motorbike clubs of London. They all wanted to be part of this and show how patriotic they are, show John the respect, and they took us through the streets of London and delivered us to the wonderful Westminster Arms opposite the studios here. John's had a fantastic time. You know, he's had a brilliant present, a brilliant day so far, and it's just beginning, John. You've still got a couple more drinks and a few more meals and parties to go yet, I think.
And I'm hoping, actually, John, you'll be around at 6 o'clock, so I knock off. I would love to buy you a pint over the way. Can I please buy you a drink?
Pardon?
Can I please buy you a drink after the show?
If I just drink some tonic water.
That's fine, mate. Whatever you're drinking, I'm buying. But on a serious point, fantastic images. We've got a cake here. Then if you're allowed to have cake, you don't maybe don't drink any rum anymore. We've got cake for you here.
Thank you.
That's for you. And Matthew, I always talk to you. And Pilgrim Bandits, an amazing charity. You run that. We had you on the show last week. You're with some veterans doing a diving course out there. Tell us about Pilgrim Bandits and how you help to, keep people like John in the public eye, keep their stories alive. So important, of course, as we approach VE Day 80th anniversary.
That's right. I mean, the Pilgrim Bandits never turn anyone away. John's our oldest member, and a good friend of mine who was serving in Australia told me about John's story and his plight. And together with the son, the regimental associations, we brought John over, put him in the Royal Hospital Chelsea, which he's never forgiven me for now. Only joking. You've got a wonderful life now in Royal Hospital Chelsea, full of friends, full of supporters that go there, and that's what the Pilgrim Bandits do. Our next challenge, John, and John's going to support us. We're cycling from tomorrow from Newcastle Rugby Club all the way down to Exeter, hitting every Premiership rugby club on the way, raising money for VE 80 injured veterans, both blue light and military, and of course motor neurone disease, which is very close to all of our hearts.
OK, that's excellent stuff. Matthew Hellier, always an absolute pleasure. John Morris, veteran, legend, 103 today. Thank you for coming down. I wish you the very, very best. It's a pleasure to be in the presence of such legendary sages. Thank you both so much. Now, briefly need to cross to the House of Commons. Statement is being delivered
with a
on the earlier gender recognition bill.
Is a man for the purposes of the Act. The case was appealed to the Supreme Court, and last week the court ruled that sex in the Equality Act means biological sex. This means that a person will be considered as their biological sex for the purposes of the Equality Act, regardless of whether or not they have a gender recognition certificate. I know that the women who brought this challenge have not always been treated with the respect that they deserve. And this government believes in freedom of speech, and we believe in the fundamental right to protest. But in no way does that extend to criminal damage. There can be no excuse for defaced statues of feminist icons. No excuse for threats, no excuse for harassment. Madam Deputy Speaker, such acts seek to drag down the debate away from common sense, away from the sensible view held by the majority of the British public that women need single-sex spaces, that those spaces should be protected, and that you can protect those spaces while treating trans people with respect as well. So the certainty that this judgment brings is welcome. And now, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is time to move forward. There's now a need to ensure that this ruling is clear across a range of settings, from healthcare and prisons to sport and single-sex support groups. The Equality and Human Rights Commission, as Britain's equality regulator, is working quickly to issue an updated statutory code of practice to reflect this judgment, and I look forward to reviewing that code of practice in due course. And Madam Deputy Speaker, alongside these updates, our work to protect single-sex spaces across society continues in earnest. Because for far too long, under the Conservative government, single-sex spaces were anything but. And nowhere is that clearer than in our hospitals. Year after year, the party opposite pledged to close mixed-sex wards, and yet year after year, their use not only persisted, it grew massively. And year after year, often in their most vulnerable moments, women were denied the privacy and the dignity that they deserved. Time after time, Conservative ministers, including the now leader of the opposition, came to this House and toured television studios telling the public that they were protecting single-sex spaces in our hospitals. Madam Deputy Speaker, the truth was very, very different. Because as last year's data tells us, the use of mixed-sex wards rose by over 2,200%, 2,200% in 10 years under the last Tory government. There is no better example of this, of rhetoric divorced from reality, of a party playing politics with the safety of women, and we will never let them forget it. Madam Deputy Speaker, by contrast, this government will protect women's wards, and NHS England will soon publish guidance on how trans patients should be accommodated in clinical settings, and we will end the practice of mixed-sex wards once and for all. It is not just in our NHS that we will act on behalf of women. In prisons, we will continue to protect women's safety with single-sex accommodation. In women's sport, I've always backed integrity and fairness. Biology matters for competitive sport, and sporting bodies have issued rules to reflect this. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, in our prisons, in our hospitals, in sport, in a whole host of other spaces, what was true before the ruling remains true after the ruling. This government protects safe spaces for women under the Equality Act 2010. And for too many years, we've seen the heat dialed up on this debate by the party opposite with no real action to protect women's spaces. While the use of mixed-sex wards increased under their watch, while an epidemic of violence against women and girls spread across the country, while women's health was neglected, this Labour government will deliver for women through our plan for change, driving down waiting lists month after month, tackling misogyny throughout society, and once and for all, delivering justice for survivors of violence against women and girls. Madam Deputy Speaker, I know as well that many trans people will be worried in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling. So I want to provide reassurance here and now that trans people will continue to be protected. We will deliver a full trans-inclusive ban on conversion practices. We will work to equalise all existing strands of hate crime, and we will review adult gender identity services so that all trans people get the high-quality care that they deserve. The laws to protect trans people from discrimination and harassment will remain in place, and trans people will still be protected on the basis of gender reassignment, a protected characteristic written into Labour's Equality Act. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government will offer trans people the dignity that too often they were denied by the party opposite. Too often, a convenient punch bag. Too often, the butt of jokes made in this place by the party opposite, culminating rather shamefully in the previous Prime Minister standing at this dispatch box trying to score cheap laughs from his backbenchers at the expense of vulnerable people. By contrast, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is clear. Trans people deserve safety, they deserve opportunity, and they deserve respect. Madam Deputy Speaker, this verdict is about clarity and coherence in the eyes of the law. But the Supreme Court judges delivered, along with that verdict, a vital reminder. This isn't about the triumph of one group at the expense of another. It's not about winners or losers. It's not about us or them. And that is the message that I want to reinforce here today in this House. Everyone in our society deserves dignity and respect. Those values are not and never will be a zero-sum battle. Dignity and respect for all. Those are the values that lift us up and set us free. Those are the values that define and distinguish any modern and compassionate society. And those are the values, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this government will do everything to promote and protect now and always. And I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of her statement, even if it was mostly a shameless work of fiction. I could not believe my eyes or my ears this afternoon. In 2021, the Prime Minister said it is not right to say only women have a cervix. In 2022, he said it is the law that trans women are women. In 2023, he said, and I quote, 99% of women don't have a penis. I know what a woman is, and I always have. The people of this country know what a woman is. We didn't need the Supreme Court to tell us that, but this government did. A Labour government so desperate to jump on a bandwagon that they abandoned common sense, along with the SNP, who put rapists in women's prisons, and of course the Liberal Democrats. The Supreme Court ruling is a powerful victory for the determined women behind For Women Scotland and for people all over the UK who know how important it is to give privacy and dignity to women and girls who need it. But it follows years of battle. Individual women took action to uphold the law at great personal cost, losing their jobs and their reputations. A few weeks ago, I met the Darlington nurses who have been forced to bring legal action after a male nurse started using their changing room. Even their union, the Royal College of Nursing, refused to represent them. Women should not have to battle the NHS or their employers through the courts. Why has it been such a battle? Because something as simple as biological reality became politicised and corrupted by activists pushing this ideology as foolish politicians cheered. Even the Secretary of State, who said that this is personal to her, stated just last year that men should access women's spaces. Whether it is female victims in our courts being forced to refer to their male sex attackers as she, or the NHS using confusing gender-neutral language, putting the health of women at risk, this is a serious matter. At every point, we have fought for women. We faced hostility from activist groups and those opposite. In 2020, when we rejected Labour's calls to introduce self-ID, or in 2021, when the then Home Secretary, the member for Whittam, ordered police forces to stop recording offences by trans women in female crime statistics. The current Culture Secretary said that crimes committed by men should be recorded how they wish, that those convicted of serious sexual offences should be held in jails that match their chosen gender. It was crazy then, and it is crazy now. I spent years battling abuse from Labour MPs as I fought to uphold biological sex in government, and as I blocked the SNP introducing their mad self-identity laws. I will take no lectures from them on what to do on this. Women and gay rights groups like the LGB Alliance were even refused stands at the Labour Party conference. The idea that they have supported this all along is for the birds. The Foreign Secretary described opponents of self-ID as dinosaurs. Labour now says that they know what a woman is and that transgender people should use services and facilities designated to their biological sex. They've never said this before. This is a U-turn, but we welcome it. Now that we have legal clarity, will the Prime Minister show some courage and do the right thing? Will he apologise to the member for Canterbury, who faced so many security concerns as she was hounded out by the Labour Party and was rebuked by the Prime Minister and many Labour MPs sitting there looking at me for stating what the Supreme Court has now ruled to be true? Will she apologise to the member for Canterbury? I doubt it. Will the Prime Minister crack down on the groups we saw defacing statues of suffragists over the weekend with the same energy he reserves for his political opponents? Or will we see more two-tier justice? Because the last time we saw Labour MPs standing next to them with no rebuke whatsoever. Will the Secretary of State ensure that the EHRC has the government's full support in its enforcement of the Code of Practice? And in particular, will she condemn those Labour ministers who described Baroness Faulkner's entirely correct position on the judgment as appalling? Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to root out gender ideology from our institutions. This government now has a serious job to do, as many organisations will still fail women. So I ask the following. As Minister for Women and Equalities, I published guidance for schools that made clear that toilets and changing rooms must be provided separately for girls and boys. She scrapped that guidance. Will she stand up to the unions and urgently publish what she now admits is the law? She also scrapped RHSE guidance to prevent schools from teaching contested gender ideology as fact. Will she now publish this guidance and remove materials that misstate the law? Will she act to stop passports and licences being issued with self-declared rather than legal sex? Will the government support our amendments to the data bill to ensure digital ID systems record biological sex accurately? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I heard the Secretary of State. She says that she is here to protect transgender people. Many of them were misled by Labour's misstatements on this issue. Some are now left very anxious. She has not provided any reassurance, and she should not use them as a shield to protect her failure. This isn't the end of the matter, but the beginning of the end. There is so much to do, and the Conservative Party, under my leadership, will be relentless in ensuring the government does the right thing.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm delighted to see the Right Honourable Lady in her place today. Many would run from a record like hers on these matters, but not the Right Honourable Lady. She and the party opposite had 14 years to provide clarity on the issues they now claim to take an interest in. And the Supreme Court confirmed that Labour's Equality Act is the basis for single-sex spaces and protection. But they didn't, Madam Deputy Speaker, they didn't provide that clarity. But before I turn and say a bit more about the Right Honourable Lady's record, I'll say a little bit more about mine. I will come to the questions. If the Right Honourable Lady would have some patience, I will respond to her questions. Madam Deputy Speaker, I have supported countless women and children fleeing appalling male violence, sexual violence and domestic abuse. I have campaigned for decades on women's rights. I know more than most the importance of spaces for women. I fought for them, I delivered them, I ran them. And during my time running that refuge, while Labour was delivering the groundbreaking Equality Act, which this ruling confirms sets in law the basis for single-sex spaces, what was the leader of the opposition doing? She was busy hacking the website of the leading architect of the Equality Act, forever the keyboard warrior. And she's learned nothing from her party's crushing electoral defeat last year. She held the post of Minister for Women and Equalities for 2 years and did precisely nothing. Provided no clarity in the law and nothing to improve the lives of women, which got materially worse on her watch. She comes here claiming to speak for women, but let's look at her record and her party's record. An increase in stalking offences, prosecutions and convictions for domestic abuse nearly halved since 2015. The rape charge rate at a record low. Survivors of sexual violence waiting years for justice. A 2000 1,000% increase in the use of mixed-sex wards in over 10 years. That is their record, Madam Deputy Speaker. And in terms of the questions that she asks about the Equality and Human Rights Commission and their statutory code of conduct, their statutory code of practice. I have set out that I'm expecting an updated version of that as quickly as is possible. I will work with the Equality and Human Rights Commission to implement that code of practice to make sure that everyone has the clarity that they require, and I expect the EHRC to work quickly and thoroughly on this matter. Madam Deputy Speaker, she asks about gender questioning guidance and she asks about RSHE guidance. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm afraid that's just another area that is simply laughable. Merely months before the election was called, they published a version of the draft guidance for gender questioning children. And since that time, we had the final review published by Dr. Hilary Cass. It is right that we ensure that that guidance aligns with Dr. Cass's final review. And on the RSHE guidance, that consultation concluded after the election. We couldn't be clearer, Madam Deputy Speaker. We will always protect single-sex spaces, and on this side of the House, we are focused on delivering for women. While the Leader of the Opposition described maternity pay as excessive and called the minimum wage harmful, we are improving protections for pregnant women at work. We are ensuring that women can take maternity leave and come back to good, secure jobs. We are expanding childcare. The first 750 new free breakfast clubs open today. We've brought forward the single biggest piece of child protection legislation in a generation to protect young women and girls. And Madam Deputy Speaker, it was Labour's groundbreaking Equality Act that provides the basis for single-sex spaces for biological women that has been set out today. This Labour government has a plan for change, a plan that will deliver for women. It's time for her party to get offline and get on board.
Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee, Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Far from this ruling providing clarity, trans, intersex and non-binary people are instead anxious and unsure about where this ruling leaves them, legally and practically, as they go about their lives. Does the Minister recognise that this ruling was made without a single contribution from trans people themselves? And will she ensure trans, intersex and non-binary people will be involved in any upcoming new guidance, and if so, how? Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I do believe this ruling provides much-needed clarity. I do recognise the Chair of the Select Committee's concern in ensuring that all people are treated with dignity and respect, including trans people. And my expectation is that through the development of the Code of Practice and the guidance, the EHRC will engage with a range of stakeholders with a range of different views as they develop that work and set it out in full.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of her statement. I, of course, respect the independence of the Supreme Court and the ruling it has made to interpret the law as it stands, as I do the concerns of many women and the fears, the now increased fears, of the LGBT community. I also respect what the Secretary of State had to say about her experience of working in a refuge, and I agree there is no length that we shouldn't go to ensure protection for women in that situation. But I'm sure from what she said, the Secretary of State will agree with me that that shouldn't be at the cost of the human rights and the security of another vulnerable group in society, which is what this threatens to do. And I would ask her if she could explain where now those transgender people who are fleeing violence, where they can go for refuge if they are going to be completely excluded. For years, we've seen this intolerable debate where two vulnerable groups have been pitted against each other, two vulnerable groups afraid of the same thing, violence, and mostly from men. So now the challenge for this government is to live up to the spirit of perhaps one of its proudest achievements in its previous government, the Equality Act, in protecting everyone. And I would ask the Minister Does she think it would be acceptable, if this government is not able to do that, that we see trans women forced into men's toilets to face goodness knows what sort of aggression?
That was the Commons there. Kemi Badenoch and Bridget Phillipson tangling on the gender ruling bill. Let's get back now to another huge story in town. It's the former senior circuit judge Deborah Taylor has been appointed to chair the statutory inquiry into systemic failures to stop the triple killer Valdo Callaghan. I'm delighted to join in the studio by the father of Grace O'Malley Kumar, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, and the father of Barnaby Webber, David Webber. You both visited Parliament earlier on. Gentlemen, welcome to the studio. Thank you. Can I first come to you, perhaps, Sanjay? Tell us about today and tell us what the next steps are on this inquiry.
Well, today we get what the Prime Minister promised us. We get to find the failures before we fix them. It's all about identifying the failures, and there have been several. This is one of them. This is the NHS report that had been supplied to us, the homicide report, not worth the paper that it's been printed on. No names of psychiatrists who actually, cocked up. And in terms of incompetent psychiatrists, they still haven't been identified. We would like to know, Valdo Callaghan was sectioned 4 times. Was it 4 doctors who failed us 4 times, or was it 1 doctor who failed us that many times? So we'd like to know the detail. There is no detail. So today we are hoping we can get to detail.
And David Webber, what does justice look like for you? Do you want people to be prosecuted? Do you want people to lose their jobs, to be jailed?
I absolutely. I mean, I think if that is what is required, absolutely. I mean, Sanjoy's just said about incompetent psychiatrists. How these people can release someone like Callaghan back out, back to the GP. When they know how dangerous he is, it beggars belief. And, while that report is incompetent, and it is an incompetent report, I believe, I don't believe it's worth the paper it's written on. However, it does say stuff in there that when you actually read the context of how dangerous he was, it begs the question, what goes on in people's heads? How do these people... how do they live with themselves if doing what they do? I think accountability has to happen. I think change will only happen with accountability.
And the reason that we don't get change is because things like these reports, they're never acted on. And we get 2 homicides for mental health patients every week almost. Every week. That is a national disgrace. What we want to do as families is see that there are 0 homicides for mental health patients, 0, and that they are fully avoidable. What we want to see, yes, if people have to lose their jobs and maybe made examples of, that is the only way we're going to change Britain, and it's the only way we're going to get our country to be one of the safest in Europe. And that's what we're after. We want England to be the safest country in Europe. There should be 0 mental health homicides every year, and that is what we're after. We want accountability.
Yeah. And I think, and if people need to go to prison because they've really cocked up, as Sanjoy said, then they need to go to prison, and it's easier to lose your job and, get sent to prison than it is to lose your life, and unfortunately...
Gentlemen, we so often see that somebody is thrown under the bus, somebody lower down the pecking order. If you believe this goes right to the top of institutions like the police forces, the mental health, the NHS trusts, is that what you want? You want some proper accountability and some proper justice to be served, so this can never be repeated again.
We have never asked for anything more than the basic do your job. We have never asked for anything more. We don't want anything more than the normal public deserve. All we have asked for is, did people do their jobs? And if they didn't do the basic jobs that they get paid for, then they shouldn't be in a job. That's all we've ever asked for. We do not want any special treatment. We just want to find the people who didn't do their jobs. Simple as that.
Yeah. And I think, Emma, my wife, Barney's mother, has said 1,000 times, it's not a witch hunt. But people need to change. And if you don't change these institutions and what they're doing and the practices they're employing, then this is just going to keep happening. And people like us are going to be created every week. And I can tell you now, the pain and the suffering that we're going through on a regular basis because of this is horrendous. And it just needs to change. And I'm so pleased the statutory inquiry And it's statutory. That's the bit that we're really pleased about, because that means people can't hide.
Nothing can ever bring your children back. Nothing can ever do that. No. But the sense of loss, I'm detecting, and I speak with your wife, that sense of loss has been turned into a sense of purpose now. And you don't look like the kind of guys that are going to take no for an answer.
No.
Absolutely not. No. We want every stone unturned, because at the end of the day, our beautiful daughter and son are not going to come back. But I'll tell you what we can do. We can leave our country safer in their names, and that's really what we want.
Are you faithful that the inquiry will be acted upon without fear, without favour, no matter how high up the command chain the failings and the wrongdoings go? Are you confident that there will be justice served?
I think we've been battered so many times through this process that it's hard to say that we're 100% convinced. However, having met the judge that's going to preside over this, I personally, and I think Sandra was the same, we have faith that she is going to do a good job. And I don't think she is going to let people hide. And I think that is what has to happen. So we're quietly confident. And I believe now is the time for this to change.
Yeah. And I think if you didn't do your job, this inquiry should be coming for you. And that's the warning down for all people, because we are not just going to suffer in silence anymore. We haven't for 2 years. We've fought our corner and we intend to continue fighting.
It's an extraordinary energy that you display. And as you said there, David, the pain that you go through is just never goes away.
No. And I think people see this, they see us standing here now and sort of strength coming from us. What they don't see is what happens behind the scenes when we are not strong and when we are crumbling, because there's nowhere to hide for us. We can't hide from it. I have to walk past my son's bedroom every day, and it's the most painful thing I ever do. I touch the door every time I walk past it. So it's horrendous. And I know Sandra was the same. He has to go past his beautiful daughter's bedroom, and you cannot imagine that pain. But as Sandra said, we're not going anywhere. I will fight my last breath, and I know he will, for this to change now. Something good has got to come from something so terrible.
Wow, astonishing. I really, really do, wish you the absolute best. I really do. It's astonishing what you're doing. I don't know how you find the strength to do it. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. So much you've been using. Best of luck, please.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Thank you for having us.
Promise you. Love to your families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was the father of Grace O'Malley Kumar, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, and the father of Barnaby Webber, David Webber, who visited Parliament earlier on today. That's all from me. I'll be back actually at 7, but don't go anywhere, because now it's Jubes & Co, the fierce debate show in town.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good afternoon. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head through this evening and overnight, heavy outbreaks of rain moving their way in from the west, turning blustery at times, but across northern areas it should remain largely dry. And the reason for this unsettled spell of weather is all thanks to low pressure swirling around, eventually bringing outbreaks of rain at first towards Northern Ireland this afternoon, eventually sweeping its way into parts of Wales, parts of Devon and Cornwall, and then moving its way eastwards across central and southern parts overnight. Once again, some quite heavy outbreaks of rain at times, turning quite blustery too, leading to quite a wet start across central areas and parts of the southeast. But across the far north of England, Scotland, later on in the night across Northern Ireland, it should remain largely dry with some clearer spells. So a little bit chillier here, but elsewhere it's going to be a largely mild night thanks to the cloud and outbreaks of rain. So a fairly wet start, particularly across parts of the southeast central areas. Still a chance of some heavy outbreaks. A few showers just clipping into Devon and Cornwall. But across Northern Ireland, a much drier start. Plenty more clearer skies compared to this morning. And across Scotland, northern parts of England, a mix of cloud and some brighter spells. Some showers and also some longer spells of rain, particularly across Northern Isles. So a bit of a mixed bag as we head into Wednesday morning. Any outbreaks of